Hey everybody, Roar the Lions UK, Matthew Turner, Anthony Fitzpatrick. We're just chatting as we're getting set up here. How you doing, man?
Yeah, I'm doing really good, thank you. Incredibly relieved. We've just had a massive thunderstorm outside, which has broken up God knows how many days of relentless sunshine, which I absolutely hate. The heat's been horrible. It's sticky, it's icky. I don't like it, but thankfully we've had some rain now and it's cleared, so I'm feeling better. My house this morning, before it was 26 degrees in my flat this morning when I woke up, and it's just like that is too much. If I want 26 degrees, I'll go to a beach in Greece or something like that, not Derbyshire. I'm not designed for that level, so it's
Just
just nice that it arrived.
yes, a big relief. And I mean, it's nowhere near as humid and sticky and horrible as it can get in some places in the States, but at least you have air
Oh no.
conditioning inside.
Oh,
It doesn't exist in the UK.
I'd die in about 5 minutes in Arizona or somewhere like that. I'd be gone. I just would
No,
not last.
Arizona's dry. Arizona's a dry heat. You want to be near the sea. You want to be in. It's like
That's
California's
what
a
I mean.
little sticky,
Dry
but
heat, I hate. Dry heat, I hate.
no, dry heat's
Yes.
great.
The only thing it does for me is it's solar panels through my bald head, so it gives me more energy, but it saps me of energy at the same time. It's a dual thing.
I mean, so I love the dry heat. Having gone to Morocco and having gone to Vegas, when you get that dry heat on you, you can feel it beating down, but it's not actually making you sweat. And just walking is pretty comfortable actually compared to like Malaysia, where it can be 15 degrees less, but you just walk outside and you're suddenly like drenched in sweat, and you're like, what the? Yeah.
At least,
So
at least, at least in that scenario, I'm wet and not dry as a bone. It's not for me.
it's
I
not for
will have
you.
to say.
Fair play. Hey to everyone in the chat, to VJ Dander, David Reinfurt70, Mike the Marine on Twitch, and Giovanni Lyons the second on YouTube. And a big thanks for, before the stream even started, to Jeff Hurley, the top supporter of the show, with another $5 super sticker saying bravo. Thanks, Jeff. You're the absolute best. I don't know how much it's up to now, but you don't have to keep doing it, man. It's so great. We're very, very grateful. We are doing news. We're doing OTAs and press conferences. It's not OTAs, it's Minicamp, but it's part of OTAs, I guess. And then we're talking 2020 draft class. And the results are unexpected. We'll find out more about that later on. But if you've got any questions during the show, get them in at Royal Lions, at ROTL. You know what to do,
Well,
but that allows me to see it so I can actually get it on the show.
well, you've just given me that stunning stat about the
Don't
AVA and
even say, yeah,
everything.
don't
No,
spoil it for the
but
people.
but no, I'm saying, shall we ask the question and see how many people can guess it before we get
Oh
to it,
yeah.
so that they don't
So
go and Google it? So you'll know. I mean, we're going to talk about 2020 draft class, but you'll know who's in there and who it consists of and etc. But there's a great stat in there. Matt will ask the question. Please don't go and Google it. Just have a guess, because I don't know how many of you will get this right, but
so
it was amazing.
the question is, out of all of the draft classes in the 2020 NFL draft, in their career to date, which team, regardless of how many picks they made, where are the lines in terms of PFR's average value metric in value added? So in the total draft class per Pro Football Reference, effectively, how much value did the draft class add? And if you can guess where the lines came, it'll be interesting. I mean, the fact that I'm alluding to the fact that it's surprising might give you a hint in which direction we're going with this. It may give you a hint into the draft class as a whole, but we'll break it all down a little bit later. Cool Down Rat saying, good evening, everyone from hot and humid Wirral. I didn't know you were from the Wirral, Cool Down Rat. Does that mean that you are a liver bird? Potentially. Hope so. I'm not actually sure whether I've seen
No, no,
your...
no, 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 no. If you're from the Wirral, you're a Tranmere fan. It's all
Well,
about
yes,
Tranmere in the
okay.
Wirral.
Yes, it
So
is, but I don't... Well, that's like saying that you don't have any catchment area for Arsenal, but you clearly do. I mean, most of them are, you know... Anyway, got lots of guesses coming in. Anywhere from 32nd to 3rd, so I like it.
And when we say surprise, this also exists the possibility that we are so far down in 32nd that it's unreal. So, it's who knows what this news is, but it certainly took me aback.
Yeah, it's
But
absolutely insane.
And I know we're going to talk about it later, but I'm just astounded by how bad that entire draft class seems to be so far. It's not just us. It's
yeah,
there's no one's like got even like a half decent sweep like when the Saints did their ridiculous one in 20. There's no one that's sort of done a decent sweep. There's just outliers here and there, and then like a couple that have a little stream of two or three. But in the grand scheme of things, nothing.
it's absolutely nuts. We'll break it all down. Cool Down Rat says he's a Crew fan. The long affiliated club with Liverpool, Crew
Ooh.
Alexandra.
I like. You know what? I have a soft spot for Crew Alexandra. Always been a wonderful club that have always put emphasis on developing their own youth talent.
Yes,
and
it's
they
one of
have
the best
created
academies in the country.
They put a lot of money into it, but so many great players have come from them because we at Chesterfield have played them so many times over the years. I've seen so many of these future superstars before, whilst the very beginning
There are
of their
very
careers.
few academies that strong outside of the Premier League. Really.
Yeah, it's crazy, really. And like I say, I know they put a lot of money into it, but to get the amount of people, out of there that they do, I mean, what was it? Kieran Westwood was from there, the guy from Villa for years. I watched him play. Well, when we drew 5-5 at our ground, he was there, and you could just it was like instant soup. Well, he's not been a superstar, but he has been a steady Premier League player all his life. And coming from a ground like that is perfectly respectable. That's a real good fight. He just looked head and shoulders above everybody. And just over the years, there's so many players I've hated from that team because of what they've done to us. But I still respect them for it because they create their own players.
I'm just having a look at their team now in terms of who they've contributed from their academy. They've got, I think this is just from League Two, which isn't exactly a good metric. That's a bit rubbish. Premier League. Danny Murphy, Ashley Westwood, Rob Jones, Billy Jones, Seth Johnson, David Bourne, Dean Ashton, Rob Holst, David Wright, Nicky Maynard, Nick Powell, Matty Lund all went to the Premier League via Crew. It's nuts.
Yeah. Rob Holst, God, that's a name. There's some old strikers' names that ring a bell there. But...
Oh, Dean Ashton was terrific back in the day. His career ended by injury, unfortunately, even though I think he made one appearance for England and then had to retire about 6 months later.
I was so lucky. It was his ankle, I think, that did him in. And I was screaming for him to be put in that team. That's back when we had Jermaine Defoe and all those guys. And I was screaming for him to get constantly put in. And then he just... Yeah. The injuries were always going to hold him back. But he was a football manager nightmare. You get him on Football Manager and he'd get you 30 goals a season easy. He's like a cheat code.
I'm so addicted to it again now. I just flicked it on for like a couple of weeks and I'm hopelessly addicted to Football Manager again. It's the best and the worst simultaneously. Hey to Detroit versus everybody, and to anyone who hasn't heard the question that we're putting to everyone today, we're looking at the 2020 draft class. So what position did the Lions come in terms of how good the draft class was, in terms of value added since they were drafted in their career so far? So total draft class, irrespective of the number of picks, how much value did the draft class add? We'll break that all down later on, but give us your guesses. And if you've got any questions during the show, again, don't forget to @ me so that we can get it on there. How you doing, Ryan?
I'm all right. This heat is just awful. I can't stand it anymore. I hate the UK. I want to leave the UK first chance I can.
Really?
Yeah.
Where are you off to?
Oh, go somewhere Scandinavian, somewhere where no one talks to each other and they're all just go about their business in silence and there's no litter.
No, this is funny because this is just exactly what I do. I said first thing, we just had a big ass thunderstorm here. It's the nicest thing in the world. The humidity has lifted. My house has gone from 26 degrees to about 20, so it's just it's such a nice, relaxing thing.
Right, fellas, are you ready to go?
I think so.
Don't know whether Ryan can hear me.
I think.
Oh, wait. Yeah, it's thundered a little bit here, but the humidity hasn't lifted, which is why my door's open, because this shack gets properly hot and sweaty and horrible. Right. Ryan, you ready to go, man?
Yeah.
Here we go.
Recording in progress.
Welcome to another edition of the Royal Lions UK podcast, episode 201. Hindsight is 2020. My name's Matthew Turner alongside Anthony Fitzpatrick and Ryan McCluskey. How you doing, boys?
Yeah, doing good. Doing good.
Yeah, doing good. I'm enjoying the break from sports. No one's hurting me right now.
Oh, man. Once burnt, twice shy. Every single year in sports, I swear. Oh, we are breaking down today a really, really interesting subject. So we're going to get into some news. We're going to go through Minicamp. We're going to go through press conferences. And then we are going to go through the 2020 draft class. We all know who was there. We all know what they've done and how many are still here. But the question is, and I put it to the chat before we started, where did the Detroit Lions draft class of 2020 rank in terms of the entire NFL? The answer will surprise you. Right, let's crack on with the preamble. Discord channel is going from strength to strength. If you're not there, you do need to be a part of it because it's a great community of Lions fans. No toxicity in there whatsoever, which can plague other places, other communities. So if you want to come somewhere fresh, somewhere that's got a great energy, especially all the way through the off season, and if you want to see some good food, there's always some good scram pictures being put in there as well. Come and join us on the Discord channel. College Football Podcast, and it is coming. It's coming back very, very soon. Conference USA.
Yes, very, very, very soon. I've completed all my. I've got the first show ready, so it will be very soon.
Love to hear that. Please don't forget to like the show, sub to the podcast. You know how much that helps out us small content creators. It means the absolute world to us. Every single one makes a difference. And don't forget to go and join the Lions Nation Unite Facebook group. That's Herman Moore's project to bring the best in content creators together for the Detroit Lions. We're Twitch affiliates and we're YouTube monetized. So if you want to show some love to the show, you know what to do. And there's a feedback form in the description below on YouTube. If you've got any thoughts about the show, how to improve it, we love to hear from you. Let's get into the news. And boys, the Arizona Cardinals have been doing their best to be some of the most transparent and most exciting of the off-season people in terms of releasing some really in-depth draft day stuff about the trades that have been happening, and especially the trades that they did with the Lions. So they went back from 3 to 12 and then came up from 12 to 6. The video is absolutely nuts how quickly they had to move on it when they were going back and coming up. They were instantly calling people at 5, 6, 7, or 8. Ended up mulling for the offer from Detroit. I don't think I've ever seen anything like this before in terms of access. We saw some heavily edited stuff for Detroit, which was exciting in itself in previous years. But this is another level. And to see the Detroit offer being kind of agreed to and how that all came about. Lions asking for a 24-1, but it didn't come to fruition. I think this is a really positive move for the league in terms of showing what actually happens, because to get all that done in 10 minutes is nuts.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? You think all the time and effort that goes into these drafts, and months and months and months, and then it could sometimes come down to these couple of minute windows to get trades for the players you want, and it's crazy. But I think I was watching the show when we interviewed Eric earlier. I remember asking him specifically with Cardinals, would we do business with them because of the amount of staff we've swapped recently. Obviously, Dave Sears is now assistant GM over there. We've had a couple of their coaches like, well, maybe that'll sort of grease the wheels, having these guys in there to allow us to get these deals done. So, maybe it was a factor in it, but it was interesting to see. And like I say, it worked out best for both teams. It's all good. And yeah, it's just fun to see these things.
It shows the desperation as well, like you say. Like, they were so adamant, like say, shot that pick, all the numbers on speed dial, and had such little time to do it. If they'd have not traded that pick, after all that effort had come to no fruition, they'd have had to pick. You could have imagined how, I think, frustrated they would have been. They were running around like headless chickens. Like I say, everyone had someone on speed dial. So it shows how much planning has to come in before the draft as well. You've got to have all the phone numbers ready. You've got to know who you're ringing and when. It can't all happen in 10 minutes. So I reckon everyone's got a mobile phone with every GM's phone number in, all their details. And yeah, it's just about pulling the trigger at the right time. But yeah, I suppose they need to give their fans some off-season content because they're just a fire.
Yeah.
See that.
But, I mean, they've done the absolute best for that organisation, because when Kyler comes back fully fit, if he is indeed still the quarterback come 2024, they might have the number 1 and 2 overall picks. I mean, they've done fantastic business going down. And then for us coming up, I think it was a pretty equal trade, and they ended up getting, some good players out of it, players that they needed in Paris Johnson at 6. So, they great for that organisation. Like you said, it's going to suck next year.
I'm so sorry, Cardinals fans.
He just doesn't love ball. Anyway, let's move on. And the next bit of news is in division, and the expectation has become reality as running back Dalvin Cook has been released by the Minnesota Vikings. Last minute trade talks never materialised. They were desperate to try and get anything they could for him. Instead, eat the cap hit for letting him go. I mean, he was never going to play on that contract, boys, but what could have been a retool or, a slight, maybe addition by subtraction for their off-season has really become worst case scenario in some points.
So I take a different view on this to a lot of other people were expecting him to be cut, but this is, for me, this is why I'd rather have a GM like Brad Holmes than Kwesi. He is fine. He is implicitly a money guy. All he cares about is money. That's it. It's analytics. It's business. Nothing to do with the players or anything like that. Whereas Brad is, very good with his cap and stuff, but he appreciates what players bring to the team, the risk, the reward, paying them what they are worth. Dalvin Cook has always been an incredible running back for that organization. We have seen it more than many others. The amount of games he's had where he's absolutely killed us is, numbered very high, let's just say, but probably there have been very few games where he's not done out against us. And for them to be like, well, look, we've used the cheap years of your deal up now, get gone, we don't want to pay you, for me, just sends out a message to the players that, you can play well here and we're going to offer you these big shiny contracts, but actually when it comes to paying you the money, we're just going to let you go. And I think this is going to cause serious problems for them in future years, because you're looking at the thing with Danielle Hunter as well at the minute. He is holding out. I mean, he plays on such a ridiculously low amount of money for what he brings to that team. He's rated nearly 90 on PFF last year. He's constantly high in the 80s. Done stupid amounts for that team. I know he's had a few injury issues, but for the most part been an elite player, and they don't want to pay him. And it's like, well, these are your elite guys, year in, year out, giving you everything you've got, and you're just telling them to sling their hook and that you don't want to pay them. And for me, that's the wrong way to go about things. And then a lot of players, I think, will see that and they'll be like, what, screw it, we're off. We're not going to be dealing with a guy who only sees dollar signs and doesn't see people, which is why I think we're going about it better. Everyone we've cut, let go, has not deserved it. But the guys who have come here and worked hard have been paid. And even if they've come in and they've worked hard and we've not extended them, we've seen the contract through, we've shown loyalty to the players, which is the most critical thing of all of this. So it may seem like a small thing, but I think it's the start of a worrying trend for them. He's done nothing. He would be worth that money. He would 100% be worth that money. And they thought, no, we're going to try and cheap it out and get better. He's going to be a big part of the reason why Kirk Cousins has been so good over the years. So what is Kirk Cousins going to do now? He doesn't have a star running back on that team, and they're potentially going to find another guy. It could upset their entire rhythm. I think they'll live to regret it.
I think unfortunately, this is just the way football goes now with the running back position. Eckler was said, trade me or pay me. They didn't pay him. They gave him a little bit more incentives, and he stopped crying. Saquon is threatening to hold out because the Giants won't give him what he wants. The best bag, like say Pollard, Jacobs, tagged. The NFL just doesn't respect the running back position anymore. They're just not interested. With Madison, they were always just going to get rid of Cooks any way they could. It was only owed $2.2 million, so it's like they were arguing essentially a pocket change, and they're going to roll with Alexander as their running back number one to feel comfortable. I don't think he's going to get what he wants on the open market, saying he won't take like a 1 4-5 million prove-it-year deal. I think he'll have to settle for that. I don't think he's going to get the big multi-year luxurious deal he wants. A lot of the guys this year are having to settle, and whether he believes he's probably owed more than that and he's better than that, but I think the current landscape of things right now is it's not good to be a running back and or hit free agency. I think it's just a declining market, and I think it's going to get worse. It'll get better before it gets worse for the next few years. Like, you'll just see more and more of them not getting a second contract, not getting that last year of the deal, the first chance to getting out, because they've got what they believe to be a serviceable backup. So yeah, he's going to go somewhere, and he'll probably absolutely tear the league up. Like I said, there's talks like Miami, Buffalo, Denver. Some of them have got stacked running back rooms, but I think Buffalo with his brother, I actually think that could be something that makes them a Super Bowl contender.
I think,
but so he's gonna, if he wants to go to a top team, he will have to rein his expectations in a little bit. Or does he want to go to a bottom feeder like Denver? Split carries with someone like Javonte Williams, who's also a very good back, but earn that extra wedge. So we're going to see now where Cook's priorities lie, I think.
I still think he's one of my top 5 running backs in the NFL. I mean, you look at what Minnesota have done in terms of run blocking, which is at best poor and at worst awful. They've been better pass blockers than they have been run blockers, and they're not great pass blockers, or weren't until this most recent season where they had Darisaw really come out and play. Run blocking's been awful. Their run game has been passable to good, with Cook absolutely outperforming that offensive line massively. Like, he's just been doing basically all the work by himself. So the fact that he can go and do that throughout the whole of his career, someone's going to get a bargain. I worry that it's someone like Miami, who already have like 6 or 7 running backs they could probably run with, but there it is. And that's the problem in the running back position. It's not about not respecting them. It's just that in terms of at a passable to good level, there's like literally hundreds of them. So, you know, if you don't want to, someone else will. And maybe not to Cook's caliber, but the drop-off probably isn't massive compared to where it is. And that's obviously the criticism that comes in when you draft a running back high. But then it puts a premium on a guy who can actually do it in the passing game and actually look like a receiver doing it. And so that's the difference, I think, with where we are as a team, potentially. Thanks to Dan Pass, subscribing at Tier 1. His 15th month says, hey guys, cheers again for Saturday, Matt. Hope you have a great week. Go Lions. And yes, I was a guest on Dan Pask's new show, Inside the Dan. And go and check that out on twitch.tv/Dan Pask. Go and give the Lions superfans some love. Next bit of news. And former Miami general manager Mike Tannenbaum in a interview revealed that Dan Campbell was a whisk away from getting the Dolphins job full-time in 2015. Obviously came on as interim head coach after being tight ends coach and took a failing organisation up to respectability. And I mean, boys, we've heard it from several people who are fans of the team that Campbell was their preference to be a head coach. And then the general manager comes out and says, yeah, you know, we seriously considered him before going with Adam Gase. I mean, I guess no one's surprised, but it's just a notable thing this side of minicamp.
Yeah. I'm glad that he didn't. I think his career would have panned out a lot differently if he took a job that I've been a believer for a long time that this is the perfect situation for him to hone his skills as a head coach, somewhere that he's been, and his sort of rough, tackling, gritty mentality resonates with this city. I don't know whether it would in a place like Miami, where it's a bit more flashy, where it's a bit more expansive, all that. I just think Dan's got his home here. And by the time he's done here, he will be able to move on to teams like that and have an impact there. But I think if he'd have done it the other way round, this may never have happened. So we want to be thankful that they didn't. But it's good to see that he was getting the looks, because everyone said when we hired him, oh, you've just fast-tracked to, you know, someone who wasn't. It's like, no, we didn't. He may not have been a coordinator of that, but he was getting looks. There were people interested in him. It wasn't like we were on our own in this. So kind of gives some validation to us doing it. Like I say, I'm incredibly happy that he didn't. This place here is the perfect fit for him, and he should be nowhere else.
I mean, the Adam Gase era, well, that really went well for everyone involved, didn't it? So yeah, it's a shame. He earned that job. He deserved that job, and I think he'd have probably done a damn sight better. Even though, if I remember rightly, the string of quarterbacks that were there at the time were dreadful. Like I say, I'm pretty sure Miami were a sinking start at that point, but it's sad to see like he was overlooked for no real reason. Sounds like an air of regret as well. Is a lying undertone of we wish we'd given it to him.
Yeah, I was just trying to remember whether it was Tannenbaum and Tannehill, but I think it's too early for Tannehill. I can't remember. Who was on the centre in 2015. I don't think it was anyone good. You're right, but anyway, we'll go to the annals later on. Anyway, last bit of news. Megatron, Calvin Johnson at Allen Park on the final day of minicamp in preparation for a youth camp he's doing there after mandatory minicamp. He went on 97, won the ticket, and told them that he's planning on being available to the team to help players at Allen Park as much as possible, specifically picking out Jameson Williams as someone who he thinks is a terrific talent who could use his guidance. That was a piece by Eric Schlitt from Pride of Detroit. Go and check that out. But boys, he's properly back in the fold, and while he wasn't there for the Lions specifically on Thursday because he was doing his own thing, he very much seems like he's starting to embrace being a part of the furniture again.
Glad it's over.
I have no interest in Calvin and his vanity. I don't care if he's there or not, to be honest. I have no interest in him anymore. He's old news.
Yeah, I'm kind of just glad it's over, if it is, and that they finally sorted it. But like Ryan says, you're not going to go through the hard times. You could come back when it's getting brighter. Then who knows? But it's just I'm just glad they've sorted it. And if he can help JMO out, then great. And as I say, it's just nice to not have that above us anymore. If they've worked it out, great. But overall, yeah, it is a bit. I've just been so tired by this story over the years. It's kind of just jaded me out.
I've become tired of it, but only because it never really seemed like there was a solution in sight at all. It looked like it was going to go on forever. I am glad that this seems to be the end of that chapter and the beginning of a new one. I mean, obviously it being productive, if it becomes productive, is the best case scenario, because I do think there is expertise there that, can help, if it genuinely is going to help. If he's there just paying lip service to something, collecting his check and going, then fine. And we all know that he regards money and respects highly, compared to perhaps some, but he was the best in the NFL for a reason, and perhaps his ego deserved to be that big. I don't know. Anyway, at least, hopefully, we've heard the end of their shutout, potentially. Let's move on to mandatory minicamp and just have a look at the few days that we've got here, all looking at Pride of Detroit's breakdown, just generally speaking, and it does look like the Lions have had a reasonably good camp. Obviously, Hooker unable to practice in the quarterbacks on day one, but Goff and Sudfeld getting some big work with Martinez on the third string, and Goff had some iffy moments when it came to OTAs beforehand, but actually has started to progress a little bit, and actually coming on to the interviews that we have later on, someone mentioned that it was Marvin Jones. What really stands out about Goff is just how professional he is in terms of work ethic and how many reps he's willing to take at minicamp and OTAs, which I thought was an interesting comment from Marvin Jones, considering who he's been quarterbacked with in the past. Tight end Sam Laporta again, completely just doing the business, and several rookies as well in their press conferences took time out to mention. Jahmyr Gibbs mentioned how impressive Laporta has been, how little he's dropped, and how fast that guy is, how much separation he's getting in his breaks, which is really nice to see. He caught multiple touchdowns in team drills, including over Ifeatu Melifonwu, which is really nice to hear. Craig Reynolds was taking first team snaps, with Gibbs fourth in line, but he's getting restricted still because of the little tweak he had earlier in OTAs. Wide receivers, Jameson Williams, in fact, throughout all 3 days, seemed to kind of have ups and downs. Day one and day three, I think I remember reading that they were not the best days with a couple of drops in there, but, the quality's on show, it's just not translating. But then on day two, it looked like he really took a step and actually made some things happen. Offensive line, Ragnow out at centre on day one, but I think he came back later on, if I remember rightly. But the line is 3 to 4 guys deep at this point in camp, and actually in the press conferences, I think Taylor Decker said they've never had this many O-line guys in camp before, which is really interesting to hear considering how set that first team seems, boys. So all in all, I'll just leave it there while I kind of go through the defense in just a minute. But for the offensive side of the ball, it seems like they've made some good strides so far.
Very hard to. Yeah, it looks good. Like I said, they're coming up against a better defense this year, but I think the overarching thing of this is everyone is getting pushed. A lot of the guys who are sort of on the periphery and who might be struggling to make the team are the ones that you've been hearing the best things about. And I think that's because they know their spots are in danger. And it's like the first year under this regime where we've really had that. I mean, the rosters have kind of been locked up by this point, even without camp and that the last 2 years. Now there are a lot of grey areas, a lot of people who are in danger, even big names. So it's the offenses seem to be getting its thing going. It started slow, but this is what this whole thing is about. It's about getting rhythm. I don't really want to see this offense going gung-ho and everything clicking until you reach the preseason when you start playing games. They're not even in pads yet. So it's good to see the guys impressing, and it's good to see the rhythm getting there. They're on track, but that's the least of what you would expect.
Yeah, I saw a quote, I think of Manzaloni saying, like, it's all well and good, but wait until I can basically like lay one of these fuckers out with pads on. I think that's how he parlayed it, because Gibbs apparently he just keeps running past them all, catching all his balls and terrorizing the linebackers. Yeah. Gibbs has also said that it's totally different because Nick Saban also tried to kill them in practice. Apparently Alabama practices were not fun and they were not enjoyable. And that right now this is like the most enjoyable camp he's ever had because they're not trying to kill them. They're trying to actually get them to preseason, which says a lot, I think, about the pro game compared to athletes who are also just students, how little or maybe how too hard they're pushed. But it's good to hear good stuff like, let's say, like Laporta. I need to hear the fact that he's pulling away from everyone in the tight end room to justify and warrant him being like a clear and like clubhouse leader as tight end one makes me very happy because that's something I need to hear. And then Goff had his ups, had his downs, don't really mean anything. It's good to see Hooker throwing some balls, seeing some touch. Like I say, he's just getting the reps out there. It just keeps the arm warm while the bottom half of his body, it's just not ready to do a lot. So he's got to stay fresh. But it says that the offense is just doing its thing and challenging the defense. Whereas the defense, I say, is a lot better than last year. So they're making them work 10 times harder, which is just so much better to hear. I do not want the offense dominating minicamp because that would be a bad sign to me.
Absolutely. The chemistry is more important to develop on that side of the ball, for sure. Looking at the defensive side of the ball on that day one specifically, but then alluding to the rest of them as well. Looks like Hutchinson starting the majority of the reps with switchovers on the other side. On the second team, Christian Covington starting at nose is really odd to me because I just didn't think that he'd be able to play that position at all. Let's see what happens when the pads come on. Julian Aquara was the first team Sam linebacker, which is interesting. James Houston behind him. I'm sure that's just respect of vets. Linebacker room still running as it was. Anzalone and Barnes with the ones, Campbell and Reeves Maven with the twos. DBs are chirping a lot. We've heard about this, but it seems like it's a really fun place to be. And specifically on Branch, in the article, who is it who wrote the article? Let's make sure we get the name right. It was Eric Schlitt, talking about Branch in particular, and he lined up at safety, at nickel, and at linebacker during this session. So that's really, really interesting. Going into day two, I'll just recap the whole thing just to get it over and done with. Jahmyr Gibbs had that Texas route that's been shown on social media ad nauseum. Just really crisp, really sharp, accelerating at the break really nicely. It's exciting to see what he can do. Even without pads on, the quality is clearly there. Starling Thomas gets a big mention in this article. He's been showing, his ball skills, his speed, and just the willingness to compete, which actually I think we haven't seen since Jerry was a rook. Someone, coming in as a UDFA. So that's really exciting to see. Houston, repping the third team defense, but he's been doing some really good stuff, including absolutely destroying Abina Eze and other people in there, and Kirby with a lovely pick. Goff with the wobbliest, most horrible deep pass ever, and Kirby had it for lunch. Despite looking beat, managed to recover for the pick. Marvin looking really good too. And then into day 3, I think the main thing I was taking from this was the situational play that they had, but also the field goal kickers and how they've done, with Romo apparently looking like he's forcing it a bit, but still continuing to outperform Riley Patterson, which is really, really interesting stuff. Any more thoughts, boys, on the rest of camp and what I've just mentioned there?
So on the defense, it's been good because 2 of the names I've heard most throughout this offseason so far on the defense has been Iffy and Barnes. And Iffy and Barnes are 2 of the guys on the periphery of the team this year. And for them both to be balling out, I think, again, just sort of underlines how strong the competition is at this camp. And for them to really to be showing it up is great, because if those 2 can become what we hoped they would when we drafted them, that'll be a massive boost to not only the team, but the defense in general. So I'm hoping those 2 carry on taking those strides. Like you said, Covington's been impressing, Starling Thomas has been impressing. This is the thing with these undrafted free agent guys and the guys you pick up off the waiver and whatever. They know that if they come here and play well, they can get a starting job in this team. You only have to look at Commish and Bugs and guys that have come in. So, it's great to see, because it's fostering such a competitive spirit between them. They're all fighting for their spots now, and they're just going to make it really difficult. There's going to be a lot of players cut this year that we don't like. So, it's great to see the guys on the defense stepping up. And you said the edge guys have been doing well. I know we just talked about the offense a minute ago, but I mean, Christ on a bike, that offensive line depth scares me. They said how bad they've been and that they've just been getting rinsed. And it's like some of these guys, if the first 5 go down, it's like picking between clap and gonorrhea as what you want to replace them with. That's just how ugly it is. We need to carry on looking at O-line depth. We need to come on getting in guys there. That is a little worrying. Again, not in pads, but we've seen most of these guys like Paolo and Nelson and all this lot over the years, and they're so limited into what they can do for us. So that is concerning. But defensive wise, I'm very happy with what I've seen. Like I said, the names I'm hearing are very positive, because they're the ones who really need to show out.
Yeah, like before, like hearing stuff, I was firmly on the fence that Melifonwu was placed on the team was in dire straits, and he's even come out and said that the first 2 years have been so frustrating. He said that he's really struggled with, like, say, injuries and not having a position, and I think it's probably got him down a lot. So to have a good camp for him is really important for the team, but also for his confidence. Like I say, if for any reason he doesn't make the team, he needs that assurance that he will be picked up. So he has to have a good camp, whether that's for the Lions or somewhere else. Like, his future very much in the league right now, he knows that it's in the balance because of 2 struggling years since coming out. So it's good to hear him making plays. Starling Thomas, like I say, someone that is going to have a big factor on special teams, could maybe see some starting. And Brian Branch, we knew we were getting a guy that will try his hand at everything, and they're clearly going to ask him to play in some positions that might make him uncomfortable, like backer, like an undersized, like a weak side backer. That's probably the last place I'd put him, despite being a fantastic tackler. But if they can make a package for him, then I'm all for it. If they can manifest touches for him in any way possible, that's kind of why they drafted him. Being a Swiss Army knife. Yeah, a lot of good things happening there. Yeah, a lot of good depth. So I'm happy that the defense sounds more competitive than it did a year ago.
Damian Smith just asking something here, asking about the young wide receivers. Other than Jameson Williams, what of Antoine Green, Chase Cota, and Dylan Drummond? I know that Green has made a couple of plays in camp, which have been pretty impressive, but so has Dylan Drummond. I think he's really been the pick of the UDFA guys on offense. I haven't really heard anything too much about Chase Cota, but that may just be the reports that I've read. That's not necessarily an indictment on him. It's very early on, and he had a long way to go. Chase Cota, probably the most of any of the wide receivers in that room. So we'll see what happens. We don't really have anyone like Cota on the team because he's a really big guy. So let's see what happens with those guys. Let's move on to the press conferences and just have a look at them in a bit more detail as well. There's a quote. I haven't actually watched whether Dan Campbell had another one. Maybe I've missed something, but there was a quote from Dan Campbell talking about linebacker coach Kelvin Shepherd. He was involved all over the defensive drills and not just with the linebackers, but everywhere. And Dan Campbell said about him, I think he can be a coordinator one day, and I think he can be a head coach one day. I think he's got that type of potential. So the time is right, in brackets, for him to have a bit more influence on the rest of the defense and not just linebackers. Boys, we heard this before about a certain DB coach no longer on the team. But this is, it can only be a good thing that he's been talked about in these terms. Shep is a coach who's very well respected in the team, very well liked.
Shep is nothing like Aubrey Pleasant. Shep has actually developed talent. Aubrey Pleasant never did. He got hype with nothing to back it. Shep has hype with something to back it. So for me, they're two entirely different guys. And I said this on our Twitter. There are very few guys who I would run through a brick wall for as a head coach. For us, Dan Campbell is one of them. Shep would be another for me. The guy is just so easy to like as a coach, but not just because he's just like a friendly guy, but he cares passionately about his job. You can see that in the way that he does things. He is always striving to get better. And like Campbell, he is another one who a lot of teams wouldn't take a second look at, for reasons that shouldn't be, taken into consideration when it comes to jobs. And he's such a relatable, likable guy. And I agree with the head coach thing. I think a head coach thing, we're talking like 7-8 years away at this point. We could be talking the best part of a decade before he's going to be a head coach, but he's still really young, so you need to see how he does with the guys this year. We've invested heavily in Campbell, still got to see whether we can get Barnes to his potential, keep Rodrigo on his upward momentum. And if he can make a great unit out of these, maybe get his name in the frame for defensive coordinator when Aaron Glenn goes, then, and then carries on going. I think there's a big, bright future in this league for him. So I don't think Dan Campbell's talking hyperbole with him. We see a lot of Shep, and I believe him 100% when I think he could be a head coach. So it's great, but just for now, Shep, and I know he will. He'll keep his head down. He will work his ass off to get those players ready and in shape, and to keep on developing them. And I'm really looking forward to seeing that unit this year. Just Barnes, Rodrigo, Campbell. I love all these guys. So if he can get them firing, then his stock's going to raise very quickly.
Shep will be our defensive coordinator next season. Either way, whether Aaron Glenn is fired after 7 weeks if we're bad, because I would fire him pretty quickly if this defense sucks, because first scapegoat went last year, and I would put Shep in instantly. And if Aaron Glenn has a great year and then goes on to be a head coach, our natural predecessor is there. I said, if we dally about and we need defensive coordinator and Shep gets lured away, I would be so pissed at Martha and Dan. Like I say, if they lose him, if they allow him to walk and they didn't shoehorn him into a promotion if it was available, I'd be really quite upset. So he feels like a natural stepping stone. Whatever happens next year, our defensive coordinator role will be available. I'll put good money on that. So let's hope, Shep should just hopefully fit in there like a glove.
I'm with you, Ryan. I think come what may, I think we are looking at our new defensive coordinator. And the most realistic route I can see to it is that the Lions get to the divisional round off the back of a top 14 defense. It looks good. It's not quite enough. We come up against, Dallas and lose or something horrific. And Aaron Glenn jumps at the next job that's available. If he gets offered one, I don't think he's going to say no, to be quite frank. So you're looking at your new guy, and in response to Ant saying, it could be 10 years, it could be 2. I mean, we have seen, especially at, say, somewhere like the Rams, a first-year defensive coordinator getting hired as a head coach if that team looks good. And the way they've built this defense, I can only think it's going to get better over even the next couple of years, just by natural progression. So you think, if Shep walks into this room as DC in a year's time, and suddenly it's a top 5 unit, I think he could be a head coach in 2 years' time. And I don't think it's that crazy. I mean, I know it sounds mad. I know it does. But Brandon Staley, he was a first-year DC when he got the job. And then there was someone before that was a first-year DC got the job. What about in San Francisco? First-year DC got a head coach job. And before that, wasn't Robert Saleh a first-year DC and got a head coach job? Like, there are multiple examples of this thing happening. So I know it sounds nuts, and it probably should be 10 years, but it doesn't happen, and young coordinators are in hot demand. No one wants the tired guys with 20 plus years of NFL experience because they're outdated and they're not evolving, whereas these young guys are coming with these fresh ideas that these owners are looking for and get excited by, the passion and the youth.
Well, I appreciate the enthusiasm. Brandon Staley's probably not the torch that you want to bear for this one.
But they keep doing it. What I'm saying is it's a repeatable thing. The owners keep doing this.
No, they do, but Brandon Staley's not a good defensive coordinator. And it's maybe because he's been rushed. I just want Kelvin to take a nice, steady ascent. I think he will get there. But again, he is still learning his linebacker job. He's still getting there. I don't want to push him too early. The whole point of creating a successful coaching tree is working them up through the system. I would like him to have more responsibility than linebackers coach before he goes to DC, personally. If you're going to give him some other responsibility, and then keep building him up, and he could be great. It's like with Campbell, you can't rush these things. He's landed at the right team. He's taking his time. He's getting to where he needs to be. But he will be. I just don't think it'll be that quick. And I think it would be a mistake for it to be that quick.
Yeah. Let's go through the players' press conferences now, because, and I cannot stress this enough, how awesome the Lions players are character-wise. And you hear about it, oh, we think he's got good character when they draft a player or when they sign a player. Oh, good character, good football player. The press conferences tell all. You can't be that polished. And these guys are coming out here absolutely showing their quality. We're starting off with Jared Goff. On Frank Ragnow not practicing at centre, he said, actually, it's been good for me. I've been relying on Frank to change the protections and fix things when he needs to be fixed. And Ross Pierschbacher has been doing a good job, but it's actually been incumbent on me to fix things at the line, which means I'm getting some work in that I haven't been having to do before. He said about JMO that he's got a good attitude about what happened and he's just going about his business in the right way. About his Lamar tweet, he said, "You guys are bored, huh?" Just completely passing that off. It was really funny. In terms of how to get himself better, he said he's just got to continue to improve his chemistry with Ben and his receivers in terms of how the game's going to be called and playing to his strengths. He said, we're not just going to be good because we played well for the last 10 games of the season. If anything, it'll be harder because teams won't underestimate us next season. And on a new deal, he said, I've got no idea on when or how that will get done. It's not up to me. Boys, Goff, that Frank comment is really interesting to me because we know Frank's one of the best centres in the league and part of that is calling out your protections. But Goff's a smart guy and Frank may not be there all the time, especially considering his toe. We may have to manage him. And getting those mental reps in about changing the protections against a defensive line which has been bolstered somewhat is something which is quite interesting. And just the way that he talks about the team, about his chemistry with the receivers and Ben, and about JMO, it just sound. I know he's a quarterback and he's kind of very well trained to do this sort of thing, but there's something that feels very genuine about Jared Goff.
I mean, he's had a full season playing actual games without Frank. So I'm not sure how much that really is a thing to not be taking practice snaps with him. He's had game time snaps with Evan Brown and he's worked very well with him. Evan got a nice big contract off the back of that. So
yeah, small contract, but yeah.
I mean, for what we got him for, he's going to be a starting center for the Seahawks. So
on less money than we gave him.
Yeah. But he's still going to be starting center. The point is, he's done a full season without Frank, so I'm not sure how much that matters. And then backup center, I mean, we've got a hotshot group of our guys there at the minute. Pierschbacher, Glasgow's been taking center snaps as well. I think Goff will be just fine with or without Frank there. And I think he's had this experience already. In stuff with the JMO stuff, it's great to see him backing up JMO. I know exactly which noob has asked about the Lamar tweet the millionth time. And that piece of scum journalist can stay away from the Lions. I'm done with him and his obsession with trying to ruin
wasn't actually him on that specific circumstance. It was a woman
pretty sure
from Fox
it was.
2. It was from a woman from Fox 2, I think.
No, he was there at that one as well because I watched it. He asked about JMO. So I'm done with him. And yeah, the Lions need to ban him very soon. But no, Goff sounds just very confident. This is year 3 now. The expectations are on. He's got a little bit of swag about him now. It's nice to hear confidence in his voice. First 2 years, you could kind of tell that he was saying the right things, but it didn't necessarily feel like it was all there with him in terms of the confidence. And whereas now he's like, he believes in himself again. And I think rightly so. He had a wonderful year last year, especially the second half of the season. And I think it's resonating now. I think he truly 100% believes in it. I think they've rebuilt him back up again, and he could be better than he was before. As Campbell said, he is playing better than when he was with the Rams. And people look at that and like, really? It's like he was a rookie there. Everyone seems to forget he was a rookie who was young. The older you get in this league, the more you're in this league, you improve naturally. He's absolutely playing better. So I just like the confidence he has now. It gives me confidence going into the season that he truly believes that he can take us to the next level. And that's what you want to hear from you, Paul.
And with regards to the contract, he knows that if he plays well, the contract will take care of itself. Not really up to worry about right now. If he goes out and has another year like he did last year, and if he does lead us to that like playoff win, then he knows that he won't be going anywhere for a very long time. He'll get his just rewards, and I don't think he won't be struggling to negotiate. He will gladly sit down and work with the team what works best for them for the future. He won't take too much because he knows that we've got some expensive pieces coming. He'd do whatever he could to keep the likes of Joe and his offensive line around him because he's just not money orientated. He would not take a ridiculous figure because he's seen what happened to other teams like the Rams that are now strapped for cash and had the fire sale because other people took too much of the pie. That's just not him. That's just not his lifestyle. So yeah, he knows that everything is in his own hands, all in his own fate. So yeah, there's no pressure on that there.
Right, moving on to Josh Pascal. Not a huge amount to take from this. The questions and the answers were pretty straightforward. He says on off-season focus, he's just getting stronger and he's working on his counter moves in pass rush. He said on Hutch and Houston's success, it's no more additional pressure, it's just motivation to emulate them. And on run defense, he says that AG has put the emphasis on that this off-season. That's all from him. So I'm also going to add in Marvin Jones here. Says he feels like he's back home. Thinks the roster is very multiple with people who could fill many different roles on Goff. He says, here we go, his work ethic is huge. The number of reps in OTAs really stands out. And on Amon-Ra St. Brown, he said they've hung out in LA and he's teaching him Spanish, which is just a nice tidbit. So Pascal and Jones boys. Pascal, I mean, he was just talking largely about the fact that, you know, it's a full off season for him, which makes a really big difference. Going through the motions at the end of last year, despite not being fully fit, right, he kind of really helped him acclimatise to the league. Now he's trying to hit the ground running. That he felt like his biggest strength was being an inside and outside guy, being able to do both and trying to find his way doing both of those things outside on a pass downs and inside on other way around, inside on pass downs, outside on run downs. So what do you make on Pascal and the return of Marvin Jones?
Marvin's the perfect mentor for Amon-Ra. I think if you wanted to choose one player in this league to help be there for Amon-Ra and mentor him, it would be Marvin. First, because of his connection with the city. You know, Amon-Ra's deeply connected with it, but so is Marvin. And they play sort of similar positions on the field. He's got that wily vetness about him, which Amon-Ra will probably just be asking him questions all day, soaking it up like a sponge. I love the fact that he's back and they're working well together. And I think when all is said and done, Amon-Ra will be levels above what Marvin Jones was for us, but you know, it doesn't take away anything Marvin's done. I think he's perfect role model for him there. So I'm looking forward to them two working together this year. And then just as for Pascal, it's great he's getting a full off season to do his work because he showed in glimpses what he could do last year. So it's going to be great to see him in his second year. Hopefully this will be a big boom for him.
I think Marvin's come back with the intention that he's not going to be a small-time little just dink and dunk addition. I think he's coming back with the intention of being a big part of this offense. I think he thinks he can be, and that with even before and after Jameson Williams comes back, I think he's come back here knowing that there's some talented receivers here, and he still thinks that he's got plenty left in the tank to offer. Like I say, he's definitely not on the decline. He looks like he's just peaked now. So I think he's definitely got a lot to offer this team, and I think he will turn out to be a very shrewd investment when the end of the season comes. Pascal's got a huge opportunity this year to tie down a role and make it his. Like I say, he's now 100% healthy. He had the niggles last year. Like I say, he started slowly and then grew into the season. So he's coming into this one and he's ready to hit the ground running. And I feel like he could be a big contributor on defense this year. I think getting 6-7 sacks is not. It's a very attainable target for him.
Excuse Ryan's dog there. Let's move on to June 7th, and we got a few really, really fun guys here. Starting off with my guy, Romeo Okwara, said it's a lot louder out there on defense in a good way. He said on Coach Scott, he brings that youthful energy and teaches them every day on recovery. He says he feels like he's in an even better place than he was at the start of 2021 when he was fully healthy and the most productive player on that defensive line. On how far away he was from 100% at the end of last year, he said pretty far, a long way off. So when he came back, I think he got a sack in the first game, but otherwise it was pretty much a non-factor. He said he was absolutely nowhere near being fit. And on what changed last year, he said, he just thought that the team was on the brink of being something special for the first half of the year, but just couldn't quite take that next step. And then they just found that inner fortitude to kind of go one step further. And it was nothing more than that. And those are just the small margins that happen in the NFL. And boys, there's just no one for me more impressive a speaker in terms of being calm and intelligent and thoughtful in this team than Romeo Okwara. He's a humble guy, speaks very well, and I mean, God, I hope that he's as fit as he was in 2021 because the guy was an absolute beast.
This is going to sound harsh, but he can speak all he wants, but he's got to show it on the field now. Purely and simply, he's had enough time to come back from his injury. We've seen other players come back from serious injuries, contribute right away. He's on his last year. It's great that he's back, but all you can do now to change my opinion is to produce again. So that's it for him.
It's his biggest season of his career so far. He's got to show that he's got that bounce back ability, and that he has to prove that the team were right to retain him. It would have been so easy to part ways with Romeo this off-season and said, you know what, we've been down the stretch. We think you need a change of scenery, or we didn't quite get the return on investment that we felt, and we've got younger guys behind you chomping at the bit. But he's gonna have like one last go to prove that he's still got it in the tank. And I'm not rooting for many people more than I'm rooting for him. I say it's gonna be hard. I say the defensive line is stacked. I said there's a lot of bodies there that can all do what he can do. So he's going to have to really dig deep this year. But if he can somehow pull out another 9 sack season, I think that'd be fantastic for him. I feel like that'd be a real big step in the right direction to proving that he's still a long-term cog in this functioning engine that's on defense. So yeah, this is a huge year for him personally.
Super Cyan Lions on YouTube says Romeo will be the second best defensive end in Detroit this year. I hope you're right. Let's move on to Jonah Jackson. And he said that this is his first year-to-year consistent offensive coordinator since high school. He said it makes a big difference in terms of install, although they don't have the full playbook just yet. They know a good amount of what's going on, and the difference in offensive coordinators, yes, that's been difficult, but actually him having to transition between different schemes and what have you means that he feels like it has made him more versatile. And when a coordinator wants to bring in a new concept, he's quite well versed in what's actually going on there because he's kind of done it all, even as a rookie or before he was even an NFL player. On it being a contract year, he says, I'm doing the same as I did in the last 3 years. I'm just getting my head down, going to work, and hopefully, if I do it right, it'll all fall into place. I'd love to retire a Detroit Lion. He said, chat about him being a dad. He said other offensive linemen are helping him with advice. And that Ben Johnson put together a highlight reel of David Montgomery's tape, and they watched it all together as a collective group and just, knocked their socks off in terms of what someone who's that evasive can do in terms of his strength. He's kind of built like Jameson, but can also evade and slip through tackles too. So that was really interesting to hear that Ben kind of sat them all down just to watch a highlight reel by David Montgomery. Jackson, he wants to be here for life, boys. Whether he does or not is interesting. We've both at one time or another said he's going to be re-signed, or we think he's going to go. One way or another, we're going to find out, but he's not paying attention to the noise.
He should be resigned. No ifs, ands, or buts. Letting him go will be a huge mistake on the part of this hierarchy here. He has got to stay in Detroit because he's the perfect example of what you want to do with this team, which is draft and develop. And I know he comes from the old regime, but he's one of the few guys who survived that era, was a good player, has carried on growing, and he's shown the ability to bounce back when things get tough for him. A lot of players here just wilt and die and leave. That start of that second year for him was rough. He recovered from it. He got better, and he has just been a steady, above-average player for us his entire career, even as a rookie. And he's only going to carry on getting better. You want a good offensive line to protect your quarterback at this level, to give us the running game we need. He needs to stay here. He is the epitome of what this team is about, and the team need to get it done sooner rather than later. I'd like them to do it this year. If not, fine, do it next year, but just get him locked up while you can, because offensive line can regress so quickly, and he is just such a solid, stable part of what we do, and you've got to keep him.
I'll tag him. If they struggle negotiations, I will not let him leave next year. There is no one I trust on this team right now that could step in at left guard and could do half the job he could, and has got the relationship with the left tackle there. We just don't have that on the team right now. So no, he can't be allowed to leave. So no quarrelling over pennies, none of that BS. Like I say, if he can do it now better than do it next year, if he has a fantastic year and then his expectations go a little bit more. So yeah, I'd be engaging with him right now to get him down for a 4 or 5 year deal.
Moving on to the final one for this day, which was Ifeatu Melifonwu, which I think was a really interesting choice to have as a press conference. He came in and said he instantly felt way more comfortable this year at safety. It was all new to him in camp last year, so he was trying to find his way in the position as well as learning the playbook from an entirely different perspective. So this time, he's just coming in and knows a bit more about the position. I know that he was injured for much of the season last year, but he said that he was still able to kind of mentally process what was happening. Tracy Walker kind of interrupted the press conference very early on at this point, just kind of turned to the journalist and just said, "Do we look alike?" I think some people must have confused them for one another. It was a really, really funny moment. And actually, Tracy made another appearance despite not having an interview in this cycle. If he said, "I knew a transition to safety would come eventually in my career. I didn't know it would be year 2, but I know that the coaches are just trying to put me in the best position to succeed and help the team as well." On the secondary communication, he said it's definitely louder and the communication seems to be a bit more natural than in previous years. And his ambition this year is what could, the best case scenario for you be? And he just said, to be healthy and to be making plays, whether it's at safety or at dime, competing every day with the other great players in this secondary. And just to finish off, a big shout out for the super chat by Mike McCall for $20. Appreciate you, Mike. Fantastic stuff. Directly at Ant, #FGB. Ant-Man, excited to join your chat. Would both of you be able to give your final secondary players that make the 53-man roster? Mike, we will get that to you right at the end of the show. We'll leave that with Ant while he considers who he wants to be his secondary players at the end of the show. Boys, Ifeatu Melifonwu speaks very well, looks jacked. We all know that he's a physical specimen, but there's a quiet calmness to Iffy, which makes me think that this guy might be making a little bit of progress. And with a certain punt protector favourite of mine no longer on the team for his best betting escapades, if R2 has a chance to make this roster when potentially I didn't see a route for him to this roster before then.
It's difficult because, like I say, I think he definitely makes the roster. I feel like he's going to have to make a big special teams contribution. I feel like that's going to be the way he gets in the field, because right now, to get actually on the field, it's very telling that he didn't say outside corner. That possibility now seems to be ruled out. I think he's accepted that. So to play nickel or safety, like you say, he's got potentially Starling, he's got Brian, like you say, he's got Tracy, he's got Kirby. So there's a lot of good guys in front of him. But yeah, he clearly quietly backs himself to potentially get on the field at some point as a starting safety at some point, especially like say 2 and 3 safety packages. So yeah, all he can do is back himself and be healthy, and then the talk on the field will do itself. Like I say, because there's so many guys that can't all play at the same time. It just physically can't happen that someone's going to be disappointed. So he's going to have to go out there and prove why he belongs on the field. And this transition to safety has started earlier than I thought it would. It's taken longer than they thought. He might not have wanted it at first, might have been forced upon him. Maybe he wasn't too happy about it, but now he's made peace with it. That's probably the best thing he can do. And actually, probably for the long run, probably the best thing. So yeah, make or break year. This is the big year. Like you said, if he underwhelms 2024, he's a goner. Like I said, but if he really does make some sort of impact this year, next year, when the likes of Tracy might not even be here anymore, he could lock down a starting role in 2024.
Yeah, I'm rooting for Iffy more than most. I loved him coming out of college. I thought he did really well at his start here. I know the injuries have hampered him, and I know no one agrees with me, but I think he's one of the few guys who's been screwed by this team in how they've handled him and his development. He's even said so himself. He didn't think a change was going to come so early. He was playing just fine at outside corner. He was doing well there. And then to shoehorn in he who shall not be named, he got moved. And he suffered for that. He's had to learn an entirely new position, a new way to play on this defense. And of course it's going to affect him. You know, he's getting shoehorned into a position he's never played, really. And he's not practiced in doing so. So they owe him this next year. I know he's got to earn it in practice, but if he's doing well, they owe him another year to be able to go out there and be able to have time to prove himself, because there is an NFL player in there. They've just handled it very wrong with him. But it's nice to see that, you know, he is coming to terms with it. He's just going to get his head down. He's going to do his best. And a good Iffy is great for this team. And I just really, really want to see him succeed, because if he doesn't, I will forever put this against management for screwing with him. So yeah, I'm so hopeful for him this year, and he's doing the job. He's getting talked about in camp. He talked about all the time so far, and that's the best thing you can do at this moment in time. Just keep it up, keep going, fight for your spot, earn it, and prove them wrong.
Right, I'll go through the final day of camp and the interviews we had then. I might actually come to you then, Ant, for that secondary thing before we go on to the draft class, if that's okay with you, man, just to get that there. I want to reward our super chatter and distinguish it from the normal questions that we get. June 8th, final day of mandatory minicamp. First up was Jahmyr Gibbs, and in terms of how he's being used so far, he said, I love how they're using me. It's something I've been used to throughout high school and college. It's not new to me, but he's just loving being a part of the run and the pass game. He said about the biggest difference between NFL and college, just about how they approach their practice day, but also their free time. And in comparison to a Nick Saban practice specifically, he said under Nick Saban, you'd be working out in full pads every day in the heat for 2 hours. He said, here we get good work in, but they don't try and kill us, which I thought was telling. Goff talking to him a lot about how to run his routes and stuff to try and help him improve their chemistry together. So Goff really detailing to him exactly what he wants to see out of him, which is really good to hear. Defense, he says, reacts much faster than he's been used to at college. And I mean, considering how much he's been burning him, I wonder what exactly he was up against for that Alabama defense, despite how good they've been. On off-season work, he said he's been working on gaining weight and learning different routes, expanding that tree. He said that Sam Laporta, first word he said about him, hilarious. And then he said he moves great for his size 2 and doesn't drop a lot of balls. And then he revealed he knew his Madden rating and his speed in the upcoming game. He was told in LA he got a Madden rating of 77 and 95 for speed. So he's going to be a fun guy in Madden 24 when that comes out. Boys, no more anticipated a pick, I don't think, than Jahmyr Gibbs. There hasn't been a running back taken that high for a little while. And they're very much giving him the work as a wide receiver. And he's going to have to be successful there to be worthy of that pick.
Infamous, controversial. I like that about the pick. I like how much hate is generated. That must fire him up even more because now he's got to prove even more people wrong that he was justified to be taken that high. And that's the kind of motivation some guys thrive off of. Some guys are just grateful to be there. And some guys are like, they feed off the hate and they see it and they think to themselves, like, I'm going to just go out there and prove everyone wrong that I deserve to be taken 12 overall and that high, even though I'm a running back, because he's more than a running back. He's a returner. He's a receiver. He's a rusher. He'll block when he has to. Like I say, I reckon they'll have trick players for him as well. So he'll be on special teams. Like they're gonna do some fun stuff with him. I think he knows that as well. He knows that they're going to try and get him into every phase of the game because he's just got that, like I said, the speed, the explosiveness, the ability to make people miss in the open field. So, yeah, he will not be used like a conventional running back ever. That's never why he was taken. He'll be lining up in the slot a lot. And yeah, they're going to have to expand his route tree a lot. It's going to be a teething issue. There will be teething issues. Like I say, expanding a route tree is never easy. Putting weight on and carrying speed, never easy. But some kids can do it, some kids can't, and I'd say he's the earlier one. He can do it.
Yeah, the thought of seeing Gibbs on an NFL field has got to the point where it physically arouses me. It is just the thing that he is going to be able to do for this team as a running back, playing in the slot, playing as primary returner, which I would do to start with. He's just a Swiss Army knife, which is going to confuse so many defensive coordinators this year. And while JMO's not here, I think that he's going to take on added significance to this team. You're going to need to find other ways to win rather than without JMO's speed on the edge. So I think he's perfect for that sort of role. If you want to put him in the slot, means we can push Amon-Ra out a little bit, do a few more things in there, and just be really creative and inventive. I've seen all I need to see already. I just want to see day one. I want to see him get carries. I think he's just going to be a special, maybe even a transcendent talent for this team if he reaches his ceiling.
Moving on to Taylor Decker in what was the longest press conference of all 9 of these. It was over 10 minutes long. They really talked to him for a long time, and he seemed really comfortable talking to the guys in front of the camera. It's really, really interesting to see, actually, with Taylor. He said, a healthy off-season is nice. He hasn't had many of those. He doesn't have to worry too much about damage control this time around, which I think low-key is a really, really important thing for him. He said there's a ton of installing to do, which is in difference to what a lot of people have said earlier on. So they don't have the entire playbook yet, but getting the guys out here and seeing if they can digest it, if they can do it on the fly, especially when there's no pressure on. There's lots of healthy competition across the board, and here's the quote I said before. It's the best in O-line numbers they've ever had in camp. About Penei Sewell, he said, what's impressive about him, apart from being physically gifted, is the professional attitude. He's willing to learn and adapt, and he handles himself great. He's passionate, and it clearly means a lot to him to play football at this level. In terms of playing football in general, he said, you're paid to come out here and perform no matter what people think of you. He said, I've been here when the team has been the butt of the joke around the league and we get shit on by people, and you got to go out there and perform anyway. And he said, just because we're a fancy team now doesn't make any difference to how he's approaching things or how a lot of the tenured guys here are approaching the team. He said he wouldn't basically respect people if their attitude changed because they should have been given it before, which is really nice to hear. He said about being fancied as a team, he said, ask me in January, I don't care right now, but it shouldn't change your products on the field. He said there's an aspect of it which is cool, but you've got to be pro and perform every game no matter what. I'm excited to see what our potential is, though. The fans deserve it. We have a great fan base here. They drive our game. Even when we were bad, they continue to sell out the stadium, and they need to give it back to them. So that was the main talking points from Taylor. I mean, him being healthy for an off-season is just massive coming into this, boys, especially when you hear about what's happening with Frank. It'd be nice if we could get 4 of the 5 guys on that line fully healthy.
Agreed.
Yeah, it feels like that O-line, despite its dominance for the last few years, has been running at like 50% the entire time. No one has ever been 100%, and they've just had to play through recovering from surgery, niggling injuries, and it's held it back. For a line that could be top 5, we've never quite seen it at 100%. If this could be the year that we can kind of see it like at 80-90% everyone, then that would be nice, because Taylor understands as well that he's been here a long time now, and maybe in the back of his head he don't know how much longer the body will go, how long he'll be here, and it sounds like he's fed up of teams being bad. He's fed up of, like, say, giving everything and the team letting the fans down. So I feel like there's an extra fire in him this year. Everyone fancies us, but they've got to go out and deliver it. Like, the fans this year have got expectations, and I think he knows that. And it's been a while since they've had that. So I feel like he wants to go out there and deliver on those, like a personal message.
I mean, it really felt like, Ant, to me, that he was sort of carrying the beating heart of the team, while Goff is the quarterback and kind of like the leader because he's the quarterback. The way Decker spoke about it, how long he's been there, it felt like he really kind of encapsulates what it means to be a Detroit Lion, because he's been here through the bad times as well as now hopefully the good.
I mean, what's the well-known phrase that the hero we didn't know we needed and maybe don't deserve, or something like that? I mean, you go back far enough in this, but I've had a checkered history with Taylor, specifically before the contract and when he got the new contract, and I'm not afraid to admit that. He's had an up and down career here, but over the last few years, he has just turned into a stalwart for us, and he has earned every single penny of the contract we've given him. Like you said, he has played hurt. He is the beating heart of this team. He is the one who just drags them through it all. And I know Ragnar's big on that line, but he probably is the leader of that line de facto of all 5. And, you know, it all starts with your left tackle. He's got to be the guy, and he has been the guy. And when he's not been there, you know that you miss him. Like, the first snap he's not on the field, you miss him, and you know that you miss him. And it is horrible. And I know he's had a lot of injury, so to hear that he's sort of relatively healthy, especially given the concern over Frank, you need your cornerstones healthy on that line, and to know that he is great. And, you know, I'd all be up for giving him a new deal here, keeping him even longer. I think, you know, the likes of Costanzo and that have shown that you can play till 34, 35 at a high level in this league, and I feel like he's one of those guys who could leave Penny where he is, pay him well for a right tackle, but it works. You can keep this cornerstone around for a long time. Do it.
If he'd had a good year this year, I'd seriously consider re-signing him. I know there's a little bit to go on his contract, but I don't care. Like, the guy clearly loves being here. And if he can be a top 15, top 20 left tackle, comes back at a reasonable rate, there's no reason for us to screw with the O-line. There's just not. Like, if we can be top 5 now, do we really think we're going to be better with Sewell at left tackle and a replacement at right tackle? That just doesn't sound great to me. So I really am pulling for Taylor. He's a big guy on that line, a big personality, but just a stand-up guy as well. So moving on to the last one of the lot in terms of these press conferences, and it was the man himself CJ Gardner-Johnson. He said on being himself, that he's still adapting to the culture here, but it's all about being yourself here, and for him it's about leading by example and actually changing the culture even further and just having that winning mentality. He said guys don't have the fire that I have, not just here. I wasn't talking about Detroit, but around the league. He feels like he is the number one guy in terms of fire in the league. So the passion you see and the energy, I'm just ready to win. He said you can change the city by just winning games. Tracy then stood to stand behind him and copy his mannerisms and kind of mock him. It was really funny to see Tracy kind of be front and center on this sort of joker role that he's kind of taken up as a sort of leader in the pack. I think Tracy very much feels at home with every guy in the room there, which is really cool to see. He said Aaron Glenn and Dan Campbell both in New Orleans, building from absolutely nothing. So it's not like he hasn't been in this situation before. He said that this isn't a challenge in that way. And the individual coaches have been on the path that he's followed, and the players are just feeding off each other. On Kirby, we've heard other articles on this, but he said he doesn't realise just how good he is. As a second-year player, he's one of the best young safeties in the game. He's got it, but now he's got vets around him that he can rely on, and you'll see a whole new Kirby Joseph. He's just scratching the surface. And about wins and losses, he said it's not about that. It's about the culture and redefining it. And if you do that, that defines the win and losses on its own. Super impressive guy. First time I've seen him properly in front of the cameras as a Detroit Lion boys, and he's unlike no one I've ever seen before in front of the camera for Detroit. There is a swagger and assuredness, but then when Tracy's taking the piss out of him behind him, they're like boys. He's taking it in his stride. He clearly is just happy to be around guys, and I think he really believes in this team. And I mean, I know he kind of did it with the Eagles too, but that team deserved it. And he's coming here and he's giving the same energy. I absolutely love it.
Team needs egos. Now, it needs people who are talented and they know they're talented and they will happily flaunt it in front of people. He is one of the best hybrid secondary guys in the league, if not the best. And he knows it. And I think, he's coming into a room that's very young, that's, again, like I said, full of guys who are chirping, who are confident. And sometimes you just need that guy. You can't just be a team of hardworking grafters who, all your life. If you want to win, you've got to have those guys in the room. And I think he's exactly what we need specifically for Branch in terms of his development. But for all the guys around, he will lead by example. He will mouth off. He will get in guys' faces, and these guys will look at him and be like, wow, I'm going to do that as well. And they're really going to, because that secondary really needs to toughen its act up. It really does. And I think he's the perfect catalyst for that. Again, another one I can't wait to see play. And just, you put him out there, you put Branch out there, you put all these guys out, and you're like, as an offensive coordinator, what you do, where do you throw? I mean, there's so many opportunities you're going to get picked off out there, especially if you've got a D-line coming after you. But yeah, he's probably out of the three, out of Sutton, Mosley, and him, he's, for me, the biggest one, just because of that swag he brings in. And he's going to lead by example because he's playing for a contract as well. Even if it's not here, he is playing to show the league, you should stop ignoring me and paying me less than I am worth. So he's going to want to have another great year so that come the end of it, someone's going to pony up big cash for him.
Yeah, there's a very fine line between confidence and cocky. And he walks it like Johnny Cash. Like you say, he's very much on the periphery where he could very easily spill over if he wanted to. And he could make these bold, brash claims about being the best defender in the league. But he doesn't do that. Deep down, he believes it. And I think he does believe it, that he's the best safety in the league. But he knows that he's in a position right now where he's been put into a circumstance where he's got to come here. He's in a room full of, apart from Tracy, lots of inexperienced guys. Like say Brian, Kirby, Brady, guys like that.
Iffy, yeah.
Still, yeah, if it, they're still they've all been in league like less than 3 years. So they're all maybe a little bit wet behind the ears, or maybe they just need a little bit of an arm around them from someone that's been there, done it, and has worn the t-shirt. And he's that guy. Like you say, he adds a bit of bite. Our back end it's cushy, it's nice, it's like, oh, like let's all sit on the campfire and play a song. Like he's not like that. He's kind of like, actually, no, I'm gonna come in, I'm gonna bust the guitar, I'm gonna break the strings, like I'm gonna come in and maybe cause a little bit of havoc on the back end. And yeah, he's gonna get into it. He's gonna be jarring. He's gonna probably get into some fights, and I expect that from him. But I kind of like that about him. I feel like he's gonna be like the general. He's going to be expected to be on the field like every down, almost downs. And when he's there, he's going to make his impact felt. And if when all is said and done, if he goes out there and he gets the Jesse Bates kind of contract that the Falcons get him, he came here, he did a job, and our Lions defense was really good. And that will be a measure of it, I say, because he wants the bag deep down. And I'm open to giving him it if he comes in and he shows that he can be a leader of men, and that he can be a talented individual that generates turnovers and take pressure off the young guys as well. Like I say, Kirby needs to play without pressure. He needs to know that the guy underneath him, he can trust, that he doesn't have to worry about where he is or what he's doing, and vice versa. If they are both totally confident in themselves and not worry about the other one's doing, then they'll be the best tandem in the league, best trio potentially.
Right. We've come to the end of that, and before we go into the 2020 draft class, and in fact it said, would both of you, even though there's 3 of us, but I don't know who you're alluding to, maybe all of us, and I'm nominating you, my man. Give us your 53-man roster in terms of the secondary players, and thanks again to Mike McCall for the $20 super chat.
Don't rush on. We don't want to talk about draft class. Take your time.
I'm just the thing is, I'm not like you guys who use nickels and stuff. I'm just putting corners and safeties in here, and I'm going to sort them out later on. So I carry 6 corners, 5 safeties. So my corners, obviously, I'm taking Cam Sutton, Emmanuel Mosley, Jerry Jacobs is going to be in there. Then I'm going to include Gardner Johnson and Branch in there because they're probably going to be playing in the nickel roles. And then as my 6th guy, I would actually take Starling Thomas the 5th, simply because I believe in the upside of him. He has been a great corner in the CUSA. The run grade for him, he's very good against the run, which is what we want on this team. The CUSA has produced some great running backs and great rushing attacks these last few years. He's always graded very well against it. And he's a very decorated special teamer. So cornerback 6, that's going to be his way onto the team. I think he's going to work his way in. I love his skill set. I love his attitude. I think he very much reminds me of Jerry in the way he carries himself. So I'm taking them as my 6th there. And then at safety, obviously I'm going to take Tracy Walker and Kirby Joseph. I'll take Iffy as my 3rd guy. And then for the last 2, I'd actually take Brandon Joseph first and foremost. I, again, love Brandon's upside. The way he hits, I mean, he smashed Jackson Smith in Jigba into 2030 the other year. Just the guy hits like a freight train, and I think he's very cerebral. Me and Ram both seen back from his days in Northwestern. He's a very clever safety, and I think there's a lot of potential to be untapped in there with him. So I'm taking him, and then I'm taking Savion Smith as well, because I do believe Savion offers high special teams upside, and I believe he's decent in a rotation to come in. So they're my 6. Sutton, Mosley, Jacobs, Gardner Johnson, Branch, and Starling Thomas at corner. Then Walker, Joseph, Melifon Wu, Brandon Joseph, Savion Smith at safety. Those right now are the guys I would take.
The notable players then to miss out are Will Harris, Brady Breeze, and Khalil Dorsey. I make it.
And Chase Lucas.
This
is difficult. I would want to get. I really want to put Chase in there. I think it's just the age that kind of is a little bit against it for me. I'd love to get him on the practice squad and bring him up. This is very difficult. It's just for me now, I'm trying to get some of the younger guys in and through. The secondary needs to reset at its younger positions. So I just think long-term Starling's there. And we know how I feel about Will. And yes, I know He provides a great service to this team. He can play the positions they want him to, and he can do all this. But you're getting to what, year 4 with him now, and maybe I'm going to say 5, year 5 with him now, and maybe Jerry's a unicorn. But I've seen what a guy who really wants to come into this team and put his foot down and be a part of it can be part of. And Jerry Jacobs is the standard for corners and secondary guys here. Seriously injured. I mean, comes in as a UDFA, wins a starting spot, seriously injured, comes back, gets his starting spot back. I have high expectations for my guys there now. And these guys who are a bit older, who have just never really established themselves, I'm done with you now. It's time for the young generation to come through and for them to stake their claims as well.
Just to save time and actually give mine, I have 11 and I just switch out Savion Smith for Will Harris and I keep Brandon Joseph. The thing about Will that I really think gives him a leg up, as much as anything, I've seen him play at a reasonable level as a backup option, but also because of that roster exemption money-wise he has for cap, it costs like $1.7 million to cut him. Just don't think they're going to do it. I really don't. Considering what he brings to the team, I don't think he's worth a net negative. So I'm taking him. But I hear what you're saying. And Savion was a really great story before he got injured. And I'm pulling for him big time. I think him versus Brandon Joseph is a really interesting battle if that's a roster spot in itself. Cooldown Matt said, isn't Harris's contract guaranteed? Yes, it is. I mean, it's such a small amount that it's not outside the realm of being cut. I mean, we have seen before players go for a hit of 1.5 million. It happens. So it's not out of the realm of possibility. Lisa says, so what position he's shorting to keep that many DBs? We will go into a full 53-man roster prediction a bit closer to what it is when it's all said and done. But, I mean, have you got any thoughts about... It's normally 10, isn't it?
Well, we carried 11 last year. I checked. Just to see what we did. But we carried 11 last year. But I think for me, my linebackers are pretty set. And because I've got, again, guys like Branch and CJ who can sort of come up and help there, I think I would short linebacker because I'm pretty confident of who I want to take there. I know my 4 main guys who I really want. And I don't really think outside. I've got guys who can come up and do something there.
Got to keep Trevor.
Trevor?
Nowitzki.
Nowitzki. No, I would short out linebacker because I'm going to heavy on D-line. I'm going heavy on secondary. But again, like I say, we've got guys who can come in, play the nickel, play the inside of the field a bit to cover for that. So
Branch has been playing that linebacker position.
And then, exactly. And then when you think of the defensive line, you've got guys like Houston and that who can drop back to outside linebacker position, can come in and help. So I'm short in linebacker. I'm just taking quality over quantity there because I think there's more quality in the secondary. And I would rather carry the 53 most talented players rather than some scrubs who are making it up for special teams.
Fair. Right, let's move on and have a look at the Lions 2020 draft class. And this is the start of a 3-part series where we have a look back at the last 3 years of draft classes. And we're going to do this every year. And every single time, the 3 years becomes 4 and they drop off the conveyor belt. And then for the ones that are 2 and 1 years ago, we're going to compare notes and then see how they've done in the most recent season. Should give us a nice basis of comparison for exactly what we thought then and now. Because sometimes it's just too easy to buy into your own hype about a player. You say something, but then when they do really well, really badly, there's some revisionist history sometimes. And it's hard not to kind of root for the guys that are still here or shit on the guys that aren't. So we're going to be reading our own receipts year to year and having a look at this 2020 draft class. Having a look at this 2020 draft class, it is a doozy. Jeff Okudah at number 3 from Ohio State. DeAndre Swift running back at 35 from Georgia. Julian Okwara at 67 in round 3 from Notre Dame. And Jonah Jackson as well at pick 75 in round 3, also from Ohio State. Going into day 3, Logan Stenberg in round 4 at pick 121, the guard out of Kentucky. Quintus Cephas at 166, round 5, wide receiver from Wisconsin. Jason Huntley, also in round 5, the running back from New Mexico State. Round 6, John Pennicini at 197, the nose tackle from Utah. And finishing it off, round 7, Jashawn Cornell, the 235th pick, the defensive tackle, also from Ohio State. So 3 Ohio State players in there. Just taking the stats from the players one by one. Jeff Okuda obviously was the primary starter for the Lions throughout his career, but was heavily affected by injury in his first 2 seasons. He played in 25 games with 22 starts, had 2 picks, including that pick 6 against Justin Fields in the most recent season. He had 10 passes defended, a forced fumble, 124 tackles, 103 of which solo, 6 tackles for a loss, and I will leave not average value, what's it called? Approximate value, the metric that we are all talking about today from Pro Football Reference. That's how they rank what they've contributed to the team. We'll leave that blank. If you have some thoughts about what this draft class ranked in terms of the NFL in 2020, get it in the comments and we'll see who gets it right when it comes around to it, boys. And Kuda's obviously ended being traded away in his final season to the Atlanta Falcons for a bunch of peanuts. He, for me, was done dirty by the previous regime. You know, they drafted him injured, didn't give him any time to rehab. It was no surprise when he went down once. Going down twice is unfortunate, but there you go. And then the new regime come in, try to do right by him. But frankly, it was just too far to go. The quality is there for me. The mentality is there. But at the end of the day, he has struggled for development with a lack of time practicing.
So there's two ways I look at this. One, I look at the person first. I just want to say, I love Jeff. I think what he's been through here has been horrendous. Like you said, he was a victim of circumstance. No one forced him, Bob Quinn to pick him at 3. Then the Justin Herbert stuff happens. You could have had this. The expectations been there, and then the injuries have just not helped. They ran him ragged in his first year when they shouldn't have. They may have caused him lasting injury damage, but we've always backed him here. We've always wanted him to do well, and quite frankly, I hope he balls out and becomes a Pro Bowl All-Star guy at the Falcons. I want what's best for him in his career. But then you have to look at him through the lens of a draft pick for us and what he has contributed to us. And this has been nothing more than an abysmal failure. A third overall pick has just completely not lived up to billing, what we thought we were getting. This is Darius Slay's replacement, who I think we can safely say he's not even gotten halfway to what Darius Slay did for us. And again, I hate to use Jerry as an example, but you've seen a guy who got undrafted, came in, played his heart out, wears his heart on his sleeve, to go through such a devastating injury just after he earns a starting place in this team. Jeff went through a devastating injury. So did Jerry. Jerry came back last year, earned his starting place back in a week. And he was top 10 in the country when it came to passing grade against him. He's just been phenomenal. The work ethic, the desire to succeed, and you've just not seen that from Jeff, and you've not seen the development from Jeff that you have from a guy who didn't even get drafted, let alone 3rd overall. And it's just been a really bad pick for us, which is really a shame because, like I say, we've all wanted him to succeed here. And again, I hope Jeff succeeds in Atlanta. I really want him to succeed, but for us, it's just not worked. And, screw Matt Patricia for hurting him that badly in his first year.
Fortunately, yeah. Disaster that we've parted ways so soon. Like I say, huge setbacks, physically and mentally. But then also, when he was fit, he was a liability in coverage. As a tackling machine, fantastic. Now, what bothers me the most is, I don't know if it was the team or if it was Jeff, the reluctance to try and move him to safety or another position, to persist with something that wasn't working and not putting him in a position to succeed. I feel like is also a large failure on all parts. The guy was a fantastic tackler, but as an outside corner, I never trusted him. He lacked top-end speed, so when everyone got behind him, it was bad news. Like I say, that coming off bad injuries that affected his knees, so he had to give cushions. Yeah, I hope for the best. I don't see him miraculously turning it around in Atlanta, unfortunately. I feel like he might have a steady career now if he stays relatively injury-free. I feel like he can be a average to solid starting cornerback. I don't think he'll ever now live up to third overall, but that's because we took him too high as well. We put so much unnecessary pressure on him. I never felt he was worthy of the third overall pick. So it's a sad case. And yeah, I hope he proves the last organisation wrong. I hope he proves a lot of fans wrong that have always shot on him. I hope he really does go on to succeed now and have just longevity. I don't even need him to go out there and just be a star. If he goes out and plays 7 years in the league now, at least he can have his head held high, saying, "I proved to everyone that I could stay healthy and that I could hold down a starting position," because that's what he needs most. He now just needs solid, consistent playing time.
Moving on to DeAndre Swift, 3 years here, obviously has ended via trade to the Philadelphia Eagles. He was drafted at number 35, played 40 games for the Lions. He had 1 pass attempt. Don't remember that personally, but there you go. 364 rush attempts for 1,680 yards and 18 touchdowns, 156 receptions for 1,198 yards and 7 touchdowns. He never got less than 500 yards rushing, but never more than 617. And he never got less than 350 receiving, but never more than 452. So, consistent, and yet, boys, not overwhelming. Good amount of touchdowns in there. But the guy was the epitome of boom or bust. And unfortunately for DeAndre, it was more bust. And I'm not calling him a bust. I'm just saying that, you know, for the majority of games that this guy played, he was the epitome of inconsistent, and it was really frustrating to see, because when he was on it, you damn well saw what quality this man had. And I love DeAndre. I've got a jersey of his in my cupboard. I'm going to wear it, and I'm going to continue to wear it with pride. But it sucks that it's ended this way for him. And not in the same way for Jeff, because he had all the opportunity.
So frustrating. That's the word for me. This is one of the most frustrating picks I've seen the Lions make. So talented, so dynamic, can be a difference maker, but yeah, lacks consistency, lacked discipline to follow his blocks. So sometimes he was just too erratic, and unfortunately he couldn't help it that his body let him down. You can only be so big, you can only gain so much muscle, and then when niggling injuries pile up, they start to slow you down. It eventually does take a toll on the body. And I always remember, like, first game, Chicago drops a game-winning touchdown. I wanted to stove his face in. I never wanted to see him play again after that first game. I was absolutely livid that it cost us it. And it felt like some fans never recovered from that almost. It felt like some fans had it out for him from that very first moment that you could just never warm to him, which was really frustrating because he's given us some of the most happy moments of like last 3 years. He's absolutely taken games over. He's hurdled guys at like 5'7.5". He's made crazy 40-yard runs. He's taken balls at like third and deep and scored, made guys miss in the open field. He will turn out to be one of those players that we sorely miss trading away. If he absolutely goes and balls out now in Philadelphia, I won't be surprised. But I'll also be delighted for him. I'll be so happy if he finds a role in that Philadelphia offense. Right, there's some good backs there. It's a strong backfield, so he's got his work cut out for him. But he's got all the talent he needs. He's got an offensive line again. He's got a good offensive mind. It's not a marriage made in heaven, unfortunately. And that's not because of his own fault, not because of our fault. It's kind of one of those just didn't pan out in the end. And it's just kind of sad because he should be a world beater. And maybe now, finally, we see the very best of him. And then I'll just be sad that we didn't get to see it.
It's quite a very similar story to Jeff, I guess. A lot of expectation coming in. I know even draft pundits loved our draft class in terms of the players we got, but injuries and, like you say, the inconsistency kind of did away with it. And he was just never that guy on the injury report every single week. So many weeks he'd take limited reps. And this may be harsh, but, you know, as well as I wish Okuda in his future, you're not going to convince me that DeAndre did not quit on this team. for a good part of it. He went through a big spell where he refused contact, where he wouldn't fight for those extra yards, where he wasn't bothered. And we all said it at the time. There will be receipts from pods where we were on when we all questioned it. And for me, if he goes and balls out in Philly now, then that's even worse, because I'll know he wasn't giving 100% effort here. And there's always going to be a little part of me that won't be able to forgive him for that, because he could have been a superstar here, and it was well documented, his troubles in terms of, again, not following the blocks, Juice barking him all the time, not doing what he's meant to do, which, again, is a concern for me. So if he's going to Philly and he's going to be great, I hope he stays healthy. I hope that. I hope every player stays healthy, but I'm not fussed whether he does well there or not, because, as I say, he quit on us, and I will not forgive that.
At the end of the day, you look at Dalvin Cook, and it's someone who's always outperformed his offensive line, and Swift, you saw the exact opposite. And that is, I don't care whether he quit on the team or not. Like, as much as that would bother me if he was a star player, it doesn't bother me, because at the end of the day, holes were there for him, and he just didn't follow it. That is criminal. Like, you can afford a star being not all there as long as they just continually perform on the field. Look at Nuke Hopkins. It's a player that you can stomach being him, because if he's going to churn out ridiculous seasons on ridiculous seasons, fine, live with it. But Swift was mediocre at best and didn't do what he was asked to do. So, love the guy. Like I said, I still got his shirt and I'm going to wear it with pride, but not sad to see him go. Let's move on to the third pick, and we'll pick this up a little bit now, as there's only one other guy. Well, there's only one guy that's all in this list still here, but one guy really of... two guys on this is still here, but one of note. Julian Okwara's the next one up, and he's played, surprisingly, in 29 games. He has only 3 starts, 1 pick, 2 passes defended and a forced fumble and a fumble recovery, 7 sacks, including 5 in 2021, 47 tackles, 10 tackles for a loss, 12 quarterback hits. It's not been an entirely barren career so far for Julian Okwara, boys, but certainly one hit by injury in all 3 seasons, flashed, but really on a consistent basis hasn't been the guy that we hoped he would be. First round potential, hurt by injury, has never really realised it quite yet, but still has a shot right now.
No, he doesn't. He's done. The simple question I ask, does he look better now than when he first took reps for the Lions in his rookie year? No. And you're going into year 4 with him now. He has been injured, consistent. He's not reliable. And again, this sounds really harsh, and I don't mean it to be, because some players are just injury prone, but when you need him, he's not there. When he does find even the smallest vein of form, he gets hurt. He can't carry it on. And I'm sorry, but in the first 2 years, we had no edge players here, so we would get him by default. But now we've got serious talent here. We've got great NFL talent at edge. We have a loaded depth room, and we have guys screaming for a spot on the roster who will outperform and outwork him. We've just seen it too often. He's another version of Deshaun Hand. Highly talented. Should maybe have been drafted a lot higher in the draft than where they were, but you know what's coming with the injuries. He's not durable enough. And as an edge guy, horrible against the run, great as a pass rusher. If you want a situational pass rusher, fine. But, I mean, who have we got now? We've got Hutch and Houston. We've got Romeo and Charles. And we've got Pascal and Kamish. That's your first 6 just there. We're not even gone into depth players at this point. He's not beating any of those out. He's not better than any of those guys. And it's a 3rd round pick. I know it's not like a high-end day 1 or a high-end day 2 pick, but you expect your 3rd round picks after 3 years, going into year 4, to be a solid part of your rotation and, developing into a really good player. And he's not. It's just not worked. So, certainly he's produced more than, has he produced more than the other 2? I don't know, but it's just another frustrating injury-ravaged career that's never took off, and I'm tired of waiting after 4 years. So it's not been a good pick for me.
Next up, yeah.
The guy's a liability. 3 starts. But not to remember in 2020 and 2021, before Hutch turned up, our edge room was dog shit. And he did not make a difference. He had such an opportunity and he never took it. And it feels like all those stats you read out were garbage time. When did he ever make a play that actually significantly affected a result? There aren't many of them. They were like fourth quarter, late in the third, second down. Like, he's never turned up when he's needed to. And I get why they drafted him so high because of his length, his size, his build. Like, prototypically, if you want to build a pass rushing specialist, you build it like him. But no, he can't make the team this year. The room is too deep, and for me, he just does not warrant it, unfortunately.
Apologies for cutting you off. I thought we'd have both of you. My bad for not concentrating. Moving on to 4th pick in the 3rd round, Jonah Jackson. Now, he is the player out of all of this lot that has played the most, with 45 games and 45 starts. He also has racked up a career tackle too. He's a Pro Bowl player from 2021. By PFF, he has played 2,901 snaps in his 3-year career and has got a PFF grade in respective years of 57, 69.3 and 66.1. Always been a better run blocker than pass blocker by those metrics. Has given up 17 penalties in his career so far, which is fine, but he has been improving, especially in this most recent year in that regard. Boys, Jonah, we talked about him before. He is a mainstay of this offensive line. He's going to play every game, and he seems to be an improving player who hopefully is going to be here for the long haul.
The only good pick in the class. That flower that grew out of a dump.
How do you follow that up? Yeah, Jonah's been a slam dunk pick, and you just wish Quinn had made more picks. They were sensible picks from Jonah, and it's kind of a lot of what you see now. Guys who prove themselves at a lesser level, like Jameer Gibbs did, made the step up. Because obviously Jonah started with Rutgers. It's still Big Ten, but to show out well enough on a god-awful team like Rutgers for Ohio State to go, actually, you know what? This guy's a dude. To go there, play incredibly well as well, shows you a trajectory where it's just going up and up and up. And I remember that first year he was in, and we were like, are we comfortable about him coming in first year? And apart from like 1 or 2 games in that second year, at the start of that second year when he started slowly, I've never once, I'd say, noticed him during a game. I think that's the nicest compliment you can give to an offensive lineman, especially like a guard, when you don't notice them in the game because they're just so steady at their job. They're so good at what they do that they never cause for concern. You're never anything to be worried about. I just feel like he's been there forever at this point, and he's just been such a great asset for us. Him and Taylor really solidified the left-hand side of the line, and it's a slam dunk pick. If Quinn would have thought more like with his brain rather than Patricia pulling it for him, he could have been an entirely different career here for him.
Next up at 121 is Logan Stenberg, the guard from Kentucky. Logan has had an interesting career with the Lions. He's played in 25 games, starting 4. He's only actually played, though, in 232 snaps, 228 of which were last season, and he had a PFF grade in that year of 39.3. It's safe to say, boys, that at certain points in his career that we thought it was more likely than not that he might be moving on, that he hasn't really lived up to his expectation. But, and I can't stress this enough considering the rest of this class, he's still here. So I was wrong. There's 3 still here from this class. And I mean, the longer he stays, the more he has a shot. We've got, 17 O-line guys in this camp. But I firmly believe every one of those 90 players can make it. But man, the guy's got a lot of growth to be doing, especially considering the investment that we've made this year through the draft and in free agency at that guard spot.
Yeah, no, that's fair. There's a long way to go. But let's not forget, he is a good NFL offensive lineman when it comes to the run game. He is very good in this team. And he's got sort of the athletic skill they like, so they can pull him across as a blocker. He can do all this. And yes, it's been tough, but he has shown in areas that he can be at least good depth on this line. And for where we got him in the draft, if he's good depth, that's still a win. And they say you don't just keep these guys around for 4 years if they're not showing you something. We know Hank. Hank is very, very strict when it comes to these guys. You're seeing the treatment is given to the likes of Eze, and he don't take fools who aren't ready to do this. So despite the lack of on-field development, they see something in him. They see that he can contribute, and hopefully year 4 is it, especially with the right guard spot up for grabs. If Hal's still feeling a bit funky after his back surgery, if Graham's playing somewhere else or whatever, there's opportunity for him. It's a long shot, guaranteed, but like I say, there's a reason he's here. Every logical thing says he should be gone by now. So he's showing Hank something, and I trust Hank in his, evaluation of offensive linemen.
6 one half and does another. They see something in him, or is it the lack of general bad depth in general? I don't know. Like I say, it's a curious case. Like I say, he was supposed to be this mean, tough bruiser. We've yet to see it in patches. Will he ever be a starter? I highly doubt it, but if anyone does go down with an injury, he's probably going to be the first person to get a call because he probably understands the system best of anyone. So there's a chance for him still. I feel like the candle is dimming this year, but we'll see. If we don't see the field this year, then I reckon they'll move on next year, but we'll see what happens.
Next up, 5th round pick, 166 wide receiver Quintez Cephas from Wisconsin, obviously no longer with the team after the betting scandal recently. But the guy has come up big in some tight spots for the Lions, with we're not being especially deep at wide receiver at some points during his tenure here. He had 37 receptions for 568 yards and 4 touchdowns, including 349 yards in that 2020 season that saw him get 2 touchdowns. He had a catch rate of 61.7%, which for a primarily outside guy with the Lions, especially given his lack of speed and separation, I think was a pretty good return for a 5th round pick. Boys, it feels like when it comes to 5th rounders, at this point we're looking at really kind of punting on picks a little bit and hoping to bink the lottery. And he's gone, but he didn't give us nothing.
He's been Mr. Invisible for 2 years. Great rookie year, and since then, where's he been? Like I say, we've had to start guys like Pimpleton, Kennedy, Benson, all because he was getting held together with papier-mâché and glue and tape because he's so fragile. Unfortunately, the boat has sailed. Our receiving corps just got better. And I've outgrown Quintez Cephas. There was so much promise, and for me, it's all gone, unfortunately. He had a chance to be something. I think it's past. I think he needs a new environment. I think he can make it still, but I don't think he'll be here. I'm not sure he'll make the team this year.
It's a theme of this class, isn't it? It's injury banjaxed what could have been a very promising career. I remember after that first, was it the elbow injury? I think he got his first year. He looked really good with Stafford that first year, and you just felt like he was just coming into his groove. As a 5th round pick that first year, he looked good. He looked like he was going to be way better than what we drafted him for. If that injury doesn't happen and he has a full season with Staff, I think things are a lot different at this point. I think he's probably wide receiver 3 on this team now, and he's going to be a solid depth rotational piece for as long as we want him. But that first injury just took the wind out his sails, and he was never able to get going after that. It's such a shame. And then obviously the betting things finished it off. Stupid, shouldn't have done it. But again, if it's something like JMO, maybe it wasn't so stupid. Maybe it was just misguided. But
I think he'll go somewhere else, and I feel like he'll have a solid career as another wide receiver 3-4. If he panned out, I don't think we'd have drafted Amon-Ra. I feel like if he'd had a good couple of years, they probably don't take St. Brown.
You know, I think he could do a Travis Fulgham on us. He could go to another team, have like 4 weeks of appearing like a really good wide receiver 2 or something like that, getting some touchdowns, and then just drops off the face of the earth. I feel like he could follow that trajectory, but again, he's another. I hope he latches on somewhere. Maybe he comes back here in the future or whatever. Who knows? But I'm just sad that that injury happened, because I feel like out of a lot of these draft picks, he was the one we maybe got robbed of, who could have been a real draft steal.
I don't think he plays another down in the NFL. Really don't. I think the players that we kept, at least initially after the scandal, and the people we didn't, is absolutely telling. I really, really like Quintez and what he brought to this team. We cut him for a reason after what happened immediately. I don't think he plays again. Just where I'm at with
I
him.
don't know. If JJ Arcega-Whiteside can just be picked up, I think, by the Falcons, someone's going to pick up Cephas mid-season, surely.
We'll see. Speaking about people who've been picked up, next pick is Jason Huntley, running back from New Mexico State at 172. He did not make the team. He was cut from the 53-man roster and was picked up by the Philadelphia Eagles. He had 80 attempts for 70 yards between 2021 and 2020. 2020 and 2021. He now finds himself a practice squad, a futures member of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Do we need to see any more than the facts on this one, boys? It was a bad swing of the bat. They thought they'd get him through waivers, and they were wrong.
I'm forever going to hate.
I feel like we traded up to get him as well.
Traded back. So the trade was a fourth for a fourth and a fifth, and our fifth was Stenberg and Huntley.
Yeah, I'm forever going to hate Matt Patricia for that. I was really looking forward to seeing him here. And I think that he had a skill set which would have suited us to a T. He was a return guy, guy you can use in the backfield, maybe use at wide, could have been like a Binder in a way, but he never got his chance. And I hated Matt Patricia for that. I was so looking forward to seeing him develop. And again, another what could have been, because you saw him at the Eagles. He did a little bit there, but obviously they're stacked at where he is. We not necessarily so. I think he'd have got a lot more looks with us. And again, I think something different could have happened. So yeah. But as far as Lands goes, it's a waste of draft pick. 5th round, just get rid. That's terrible.
I understood the pick because he was a track star and he had like 6,000 scrimmage yards from college. He was an absolute bona fide star that ran like a 4.3. And yeah, I'm pretty sure we cut him within like a week of drafting him. I was like, what's the fucking point of that?
And he's a local guy too. He's from Toledo, Ohio, which is like, an hour away from Detroit? I mean, he's a pretty local guy. So I felt like that played into it as well. A shame to see him go. But he's found himself at the Steelers, and fingers crossed for him that he can make something of his career. Let's move it on to the second to last pick, penultimate pick. And we all know, if you're a long tenured member of this show, listener of this show, that we have always been a pro Penasini podcast. And the guy had a career between 2020 and 2021 before medically retiring. Of course, we now know that he has returned. So hopefully his medical issues, including the calcium deposits as big as golf balls, are behind him, gave him immense pain that he played through, and he deserves massive respect for that. He was the primary starter for a year. He played in 32 games. He got 1 pass defense, 1 fumble recovery, 1 sack, 49 tackles, 4 tackles for a loss, and a quarterback hit. This is a guy I'm absolutely pulling for. The guy put his body on the line for Detroit, and as a 6th round pick in a poor defense, he shined a light and was someone that people could rally behind as that sort of, root for the underdog kind of guy. I love John, and I hope he makes it himself. This is a damn good pick.
Yeah, and Matt Patricia deserves to have a little rain cloud just above his head raining on him for the rest of his life for what he did to John, for the pain he put him through, to try and save his own ass in that last year. And for John to, he started off taking not even rotation levels now. So he got a couple a game and just keep on working. This guy ascended whilst his calcium deposits were growing bigger and the pain was growing bigger. And a 6th round pick still forced his way into this team when we had some highly paid, useless vets in there who Patricia loved to play because of nepotism, still fought his way into this team. And it was just one of the worst things possible, when he got injured and he went out. And then when you heard about it all, the resentment that he holds, and it's just like, no guy should have to play through that. The likes of him, Akuda, were done wrong by that regime. And it's hurt us in the long run because it means we've not been able to see the best of our draft picks because one, loser was trying to save his job and he took personal player health out of the window. Didn't matter whether they killed themselves. It's just as long as he kept his job. We'll not forgive him for that. But John, this was a great pick, and it was just a shame we did not get more out of him. And I wish him the best. Literally, out of everybody, I want him to do the best of everybody who's left out of this draft class because he deserves it after everything he gave us.
Yeah, John was handled as poorly as Tyrell Crosby. Like I said, he did not get the help he needed. He was forced to play. It's almost like they didn't believe him how much pain he was in. Like I say, he couldn't even lift his arms above his head, he said. But yeah, he gave everything in a rookie year. I don't think he'll play again, even though he's come out on retirement, but I severely hope he does. I am rooting for John so much. If he plays again, it'd be a damn miracle. But I feel like if he's clear and he's taken the time out to get his body right, there's a chance he'll latch on somewhere. I wasn't surprised when he retired. He asked for his release. He's been on a journey with the Lions, and he needs a new environment to potentially succeed in. He's been through a lot here, but yeah, as a person, as a player, I still think he's still fairly young as well. So hopefully he's got a lot left in his tank.
Final pick is Jashawn Cornell. The guy played for 1 year in 2021, played in one game. I don't know how many snaps he has. He had 4 snaps.
He was still suspended for PEDs, wasn't he?
He was suspended for, performance-enhancing drugs. He was also on IR in his first year. The PED suspension was in year 2. And
when
then
we had no defensive lineman, and he could have got a starting spot.
He could. And we still kept him. He was on the exempt list, but we kept him. And then eventually we waived him last year. He remains a free agent. He has not been picked up, despite Jason. So Jason Huntley has got a shot, but Jashawn unfortunately hasn't. He had big promise. I remember that in college he was, fairly productive at Ohio State. Kind of fell because of injuries, and really never saw that promise come to fruition. But as a 7th rounder, the majority of these guys are going to follow this sort of career.
He shot himself in the foot. He never really gave himself a chance to succeed here with the suspension. I can't believe we even kept him after IR as well. So yeah.
Yeah, he's an idiot. Just don't do PEDs. He had every chance to make that roster year 2 and to get himself a starting spot as well. And he just kind of put a middle finger up and went, nah, can't be asked to go do stupid things instead.
So play Nick Williams.
Yeah, thanks for that. That's probably why I dislike him so much, because anything that results in Nick Williams seeing more snaps for the Lions immediately garners my dislike. Oh shit, we said his name. We can't say that.
Yeah.
He hates it when you say
No. You got to say it 3 times.
Wick Nilliams, let's call him.
Indeed. Are we going to grade this class? Are we going to give it
Oh yeah. We're going to grade it.
All right. So the class is Akuda, Swift, Aquara, Jackson, Stenberg, Cephas, Huntley, Penasini, and Cornell. 9 picks. Some significant snaps in there, but really only 1 full-time starter. A couple of part-timers. What do we reckon, boys?
I feel like we should write it. Oh shit! I feel like we should write it down on a piece of paper and then just reveal together. But did you say D-, Ryan?
D-, yeah.
God damn it! That's what I was going to have. D-.
Yeah, I was going to go D+, but we're all in the same ballpark here.
Otherwise, it's like
someone's drinking the Kool-Aid. I mean,
at the end of the day, the fact that you got a full-time left guard starter the caliber of Jonah Jackson in the 3rd round saves you a little bit. And Swift wasn't a bust. He just wasn't good enough, but he still produced enough for me to say that this wasn't an all-time bad draft.
Without Jonah, this would be a U, as we'd say. It would be ungradable. It's been that bad. And for me, the justification for ranking it so low, even though we can kind of say, well, look, Akuda gave us something, Julian's given us something, Swift's given us something. But the whole point of drafting is to secure your future. to build this team for years to come. What has this draft given us to build on? They're all gone. And the only pieces that are left are a high-level left guard, which is great, but not positionally valuable according to experts in the NFL. And then you've got an edge 8, and you've got a OL 8, maybe something like that.
That's
left.
optimistic for Logan, I really think. But yeah.
Well,
Point well
what I mean?
made.
If he's getting on the team, he's getting in as OL 8 or OL 9. How has this set us up for the future, this draft? It hasn't. It has set us back years, and it made Brad Holmes' job even harder when he got here. So it's not about how well it's how it set us up for the future. That's how you grade a draft, and it's been absolutely abysmal. And Joan is the only reason it gets a sustainable grade. And John, because of the feel-good nature of what he did, even though the regime traded him like shit. So yeah, awful, and I don't ever want to look at it again.
Worst case scenario is everyone's gone from this class next year.
Yeah.
How dismal would that be? That would sum it up.
If we don't pay Jonah, and we're not going to get exactly massive draft capital for Jonah either, so it's like we can't even cling on to the fact that we may get some big picks to refresh for the future. We'll just have nothing.
The top of his value would be a second-round pick.
Yeah. And then you'd have to spend it on a guard to replace him. So you it's like the whole Slay Akuda thing again. You're getting rid of a player and just to replace him and hoping that you get someone as good. But the possibility of getting a downgrade, a severe one, is just as much as getting a replacement.
Yeah. Cooldown Rat has chipped in with the 2020 UDFAs, and I'll read them out quickly. Long snapper, Sneven Versal, fullback, Luke Sellers, tight end, Hunter Bryant, safety, Jalen Elliott, punter, Aaron Sipos, defensive back, Bobby Price, and Jeremiah Dinson. It's the only guy that saw legitimate snaps. That was Bobby Price, and even then, he's not here anymore either.
Didn't we get Kevin Strong as a UDFA that year? I thought we got Kevin Strong as a UDFA that year.
I thought he was a waiver wire guy. I don't know.
But we got him first.
I'm not sure. Anyway, there we go. So those are all those guys. But let's look at this through a different lens. One which is going to put the NFL and drafting and this NFL class into context. Let me bring up the spreadsheet. And if you're not listening on YouTube or Twitch, apologies. Come and have a look at it, or I'll try and describe it as much as I can. And if I can actually move the damn spreadsheet, that would also be good too. Give me a second. So we'll move that. Yeah, we'll move that there. This is good podcasting. Apologies. All right. So, boys, if you have a look at YouTube, you'll be able to see what I've got up here. But this is the table in alphabetical order for 3-digit teams, names of teams, which really annoys the hell out of me that Green Bay are called GNB, or San Francisco called SFO. So apologies for the terminology from Pro Football Reference, but that's what they've used. This is the approximate value of each draft class in this class. So Arizona had 47. Atlanta had 52, for example. So you can see here that the top team is the Minnesota Vikings. 112 points. If I break this down, if it wants to work, they had a heck of a lot of draft picks. But you can actually see that there's 5 that contributed double digits only. Those guys are Justin Jefferson, who's 39 of those 112 points. Ezra Cleveland, 17. DJ Wonnum, 11. And Cameron Dantzler and KJ Osborne with 10 each. Obviously, Dantzler's been waived now, I believe. He's no longer with the team. Cleveland is a mediocre offensive lineman for my money. And Wonnum, meh. Osborne, I think, is an ascending player. We'll see what he does. But Jefferson, he's just clearly so valuable. And that makes a difference in this class. They are the top drafting team. Having a look at the worst team in here, I believe you'll find that that's the Tennessee Titans with 18 points. Titans drafted Isaiah Wilson in that draft. We all know that went swimmingly for them. But they only had 6 picks. The only one contributing double digits in terms of approximate value was Christian Fulton. Otherwise, that was a dumpster fire of a draft in terms of number of picks, but also the value of what they picked. The Lions got 65 points. The average was 62.5. The Lions, don't know if you guessed it right, were the 14th best drafting team in terms of what the team brought in terms of approximate value to their team. And we have just graded that draft between a D plus and a D minus. And that was an above average draft for this class in the NFL. It is shocking how bad this class was. Let's have a look at Cincinnati, because they were one of the better ones here. They had a very good draft in Joe Burrow being number 1 overall, but also T. Higgins and Logan Wilson doing very well. The problem that they have is that those later round guys didn't really contribute much between them all. But Burrow, Higgins, and Logan Wilson is a damn good draft. But that's what it gets you in terms of AV. So putting it into context, boys, is really, really interesting. There's the ranking from worst to best. So Baltimore was up there in 2nd, Philadelphia in 5th. When you have a look at Green Bay, they're all the way down in 24th. Let's have a look at Green Bay.
That was a rotten draft. That was the Jordan Love draft.
Jordan Love, AJ Dillon, Josiah DeGuara, Kamal Martin, John Runyon, and a bunch of nothing otherwise. Like, for all Green Bay have done with fairly good drafting, especially on the offensive line, it was a bag of nothing. So this drafting shit is hard, man. Like, we giving our guys a hard time, and it's an above average draft. It's an absolute crapshoot, and this class did not work at all.
I mean, everyone did so much worse than us. I suppose that kind of makes me feel better.
But I mean, I guess the metric we've used obviously is what the class has done for you in its time. I guess it doesn't take into account.
Everyone must have a lot of our points.
Yeah, it doesn't take into account how it does for the future. This is the players, what they've done up to this point in time. And I say Swift, Akuda, and Aquara have done something for us in this time, but not after this year, they're not. So all of a sudden that's going to die a death. But I mean, you look through them all, and it's like you get little bits here and there. It's like the Colts. I mean, they drafted Pittman and Taylor with their first 2 picks in this, and it's like wide receiver 1 and running back 1 right there. And then you look after that, and there's precious little. But each team just seems to have landed on a couple of these picks, but there's not even anything close to a complete draft there for me. Like, no one's got like 80% of the picks right or anything. It's just like half or less. It honestly depressed me looking through this draft class. I think there's been 13 Pro Bowlers in 3 years. 15, sorry. 2 of them were undrafted free agents. Kind of says, I think there were about 7 Pro Bowlers out the first round, which I'm guessing, I don't know what the average is, but I would say that's on the low side.
Who do you think contributed the most in AV in the draft?
I mean, I'd assume Burrow would be quite high. But Burrow's draft? Was Burrow's draft, wasn't it?
It was Burrow's draft. He's 4th.
Ooh.
It's up on the screen if you want to cheat.
Justin Herbert?
Number 1. 43 points. It's also Jalen Hurts' draft. He's number 2. Justin Jefferson is 3. Joe Burrow 4.
See, the Eagles, I think they had a pretty solid draft. Well, at least early on, they did a few good things with this. They had
Philadelphia Eagles. Jalen
Rager and Hurts.
Rager and Hurts. Davion
Quez
Taylor, Kevon Wallace, Jack Driscoll, John Hightower, Sean Bradley, Quez Watkins, really good pick there. Prince Tega Wanogo, and Casey Toohill. So they did some good work in that day 3. But yeah, Hurts and some interesting picks otherwise. It's a really hard thing to do. And I think when we come to have a look back at 2021 and 2022, it's going to shine a light on just how bad this class has been, but also how much better our drafting has been so far.
Yeah, it wasn't pretty for others. There were very few. The Bucs did well, though. They got Wirfs and Winfield, which are just like...
Tampa Bay, Wirfs and Winfield, and nothing else. Tyler Johnson, the next best pick.
But it won them a Super Bowl, so...
Yeah, they're not gonna worry about it too much.
Yeah,
Ken
no.
says Jane Rager, is he still in Philadelphia? No, he is with Minnesota now. Still, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he should be the Turner.
Yeah, talked a lot of shit last year before the game, and then like got no receptions, I believe. That was one of my favorite parts of the season. He mouthed off big time, and then didn't even get a look from Kirk.
So that is our look back at the 2020 draft. Check in next week for our look at 2021. Let's get to some viewers' questions that we have at the end of the show here. Won't spend a huge amount of time on this because it's been a long show, as it always is with us. And if you're still here, thank you for sticking with us. Mike the Marine asks, who do you think our kick returner is next year? You guys both want a certain running back, I think.
Jameer Gibbs. Use your top weapon as your returner. And if you're going to have Monty using a lot of stuff, he's got to earn his way onto this team. So I'll have him returning. I want my most dynamic weapon returning the ball.
I want Jameson Williams, if I'm honest, as a returner. I feel like he needs it.
I want Leaf to do one of the return roles, if not both. For me, he's got the speed and he's the lowest value of the three guys on offense. That would be my guy. Mix all three of them in when JMO's back. Like, I don't think you have to give all of the reps to one guy, but Khalif is the guy who jumps off the page for me. Brent DeWitt asks, who do you think are the front runners on the defensive line and edge for our initial NASCAR package? So 6 defensive linemen, all pass rush set, rushing the quarterback. What do you reckon, boys? Who are we trying to fit into our 6-man defensive line?
Oh, God. Houston, Butch.
Houston, Butch, Aleem, Pascal.
Bugs. I put Bugs in there.
I think he's going to be a bit slow. I would kick Hutch inside. I would have Pascal inside. I would then potentially bring in Charles Harris or Julian Okwara, one of those two, because I think Okwara probably does a bit more of that James Houston thing. It depends whether Julian makes a roster or not. If Houston does, if Okwara doesn't, it's definitely going to be Harris, and then maybe Romeo.
I'd bring Barnes up for a NASCAR. I think that suits him to a T as well. Julian ain't gonna make the roster, so but no, I'd have Houston in there for sure.
X Lost Oceans X says there are a lot of mouths to feed on offense. In numerical order, who would you rank our offensive weapons in total receiving yards this coming season? Say 1 to 5. So in terms of my 1 to 5, I'm gonna go for Amon-Ra St. Brown number 1, Jameer Gibbs number 2, David Montgomery, or receiving yards only? I don't know. Probably not. Marvin Jones number 3, Jameson Williams number 4, and Khalif Raymond number 5.
I'm on route 1. Gibbs at 2.
Oh, I didn't put Laporta. God damn it! I didn't put Laporta. Sorry.
At 3.
Yeah, Laporta at 3. Sorry, my bad.
Jameson at 4.
That would be the same as me then.
Leaf at 5.
You think Marvin Jones would fall off that?
I feel like he's going to suffer.
And Josh Reynolds doesn't fit in there either?
Nah, he doesn't fit anywhere for me anymore.
All right. Jason Statham Jr., let's go.
Amon-Ra, J-Mo, Gibbs, Khalif, Mitchell.
Think J-Mo gets there only playing 9 games?
Yep.
10 games? 9 games? 10 games.
He's only out 6. He gets 11 games.
11 games. Sorry. My bad.
Yeah, and I don't think the threshold's going to be that high.
No, he probably won't. They're going to spread them out. I mean, the thing is, if Reynolds gets 300 yards, if Marvin Jones gets 400 yards, if Leaf gets 350, like, it's going to be spread out big time. If anyone gets 1,000 yards, it's going to be a massive personal success because of how many guys there are in this group. Who else do we have? One last question. No, there was Mike McCall. We dealt with that one already with the super chat. So that's your lot. Just looking through the last of the comments here. RJ Graham says, I want a returner. I want that returner to practice, returning like crazy and putting in extra work. If it's Raymond, I'm okay with that. There it is. Grandizer's in the house. Hey, Grandizer says, hey, it's Hank the dog. And we've also got a mile marker lamenting our times for the podcast. I do apologise. I wish we could send this out later, but with us all having full-time jobs, it's almost 10 p.m. here. So I'm sure you can appreciate the fact that we need to pay our way, unfortunately, but there we go. Guys, it's been a long show, almost 2.5 hours now, but it's been a fun one. I hope you've enjoyed our look through Minicamp and the press conferences and the 2020 draft class. Any final thoughts?
No, I think that's everything today. I'm going to go and sit and cry after talking about that draft class. It just upsets you. And it doesn't really get much better if you look in the years prior to that either.
No, the only way is up.
The only way is up. And our next episode on the main show is going to be Monday, June 19th. And we will be looking back at the 2021 draft class for the Detroit Lions and putting it into context in terms of how the league did overall too. College podcast, CUSA preview is coming soon. Look out for our socials in terms of when exactly that's going to come. It's ready to go. Just got to nail down that time. We're also going to have a look at the news for the last 7 days when we get there too. And as always, if you've got any questions, you know where to find us. Our socials on YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, Instagram and Twitter, Roar of the Lions UK. And the group for worldwide fans is Detroit Lions Fans UK, One Pride Worldwide. The website, rotluk.com. Subscribe and rate us 5 stars. We're building up to the draft for 2024 because we're going to be there. And this is just a step on the road. We're going to be covering the college system like we have never done before, giving it proper depth, and then we're going to be celebrating with all of you. So I hope you can be with us on the journey. Boys, it's been a great one. On the YouTube, on the Twitch, on the audio. Love you guys. Thank you for everything that you give to us in terms of your time. Really appreciate it. We'll see you next week. But for now, let's go. Lions, One Pride.
One Pride.
Recording stopped.
Still live, but I fancy dropping fairly sharpish today. I have not slept very well, so I'm dead.
Yeah, it's busy.
It is. Just thank you to the guys, to anyone who's watching. I mean, that really does the heavy lifting for us. But for the people who do donate to us via the subscriptions on Twitch or the super chats or super stickers or whatever it is on YouTube, it really makes a massive difference to us. We're not taking anything out of this show. It costs a pretty penny to run everything. I know that our production value isn't exactly great, but, you know, having the website and having the software to put this out, it does cost something. And then anything else that we have surplus, we're going to reinvest into either better equipment or potentially for the draft coming up in Detroit, we're going to put something towards, you know, doing something out there. So appreciate you guys. It's not just going into our back pocket. It's going to go actually to something useful for the show. So if you guys want to meet up for the draft, we're going to try and arrange something. I don't know whether it's going to be a formal meetup or anything. It's going to be the draft. It's going to be crazy. Lots of people are going to have parties. We know how it's going to be. So it might just be a quick tweet out saying, we're in Metro Detroit at this bar. If you want to come say hi, then please do, or something like that. I don't know.
I was about to say, just look for the nearest pub and you'll probably find us. Or
Yeah.
bar. Sorry, not pub.
Frankly, I just want to head down to Greektown and go to like a beer and wings place somewhere. I think that'd be class. That would be great for me. Lots of lovely comments in there saying thanks, guys. Thank you. Really appreciate it. I'm dragging today as well, RJ Graham, so I feel you. It's been a long day at work for me, and it will be a longer one all this week. I've got a wedding to go to this Friday. I will be away all weekend, and then we've got the biggest music festival in Europe coming down annually for Glastonbury starting Wednesday next week. So it's going to be fun. My 13th year, 14th year there, so it's going to be a fun weekend, but it will mean you're in the very capable hands of Anthony Fitzpatrick in 2 weeks' time, heading up the show, looking at the 2022 NFL draft class, I think, unless we divert away from our schedule. I don't know what he's going to do, but we shall see. Anyway, time to drop. Guys, cheers for sticking around. Love you. Ryan, and see you shortly, but bye for now.